Shields up, Ironbreakers. How's everybody doing today? Yes, indeed. We have the Campfire stream, which is like the emergency stream. And as I titled this particular stream on my channel, this is the finale of my Diablo arc. I am pretty much done with the franchise at this point because, yeah, I don't really appreciate what they did with that design decision. I already talked about it in the most recent video today. So, it is what it is. I wanted to start this a little bit ahead of time so that I could talk a little bit about the situation. Because I have a lot of people that are coming in defending Blizzard. They're like, oh, it's user error. Oh, could you click the button? It's so far. They seem to forget that some of us play the game with controller, which is the superior input method. Rurikhan, do you have your makeup and clown wig? No, I left those at home. I'm sorry. My bad. My bad. I'm very curious to see what they have to say, but there's nothing they can say that is going to get me back at this point. Because here's the situation. So I don't know. I don't know how many of you guys know what happened to me or don't know what happened to me. Last night we were streaming the game, and I'll actually just show it again for the people that are still unaware of what happened. So this is my stream last night. I'm playing with Wada, just having a good time because I was like, listen, and I want to explain the whole reasoning behind this whole thing so that people are aware. So I'm sitting on the reason I'm streaming the game is because there's a bit of a lull, like 2 or 3 days before Remnant 2 becomes available, which is a game that I want to play. I want to play Remnant 2. So I thought to myself, you know, I'm going to play Remnant 2, then maybe I'm going to play Baldur's Gate 3. I'm not going to have that much time to play this season. Blizzard is making a lot of mistakes when it comes to the patch anyway. So this season, I'm not interested in it. But because I have these 2 days where not a whole lot is happening, I'm going to log in and I'm going to play a little bit of the season anyway. Whatever. So I log in with Wada, my good friend, and we just start playing the game. We're having a reasonably good time. And there are a couple of things that I don't like about the patch. It's whatever. I understand that a lot of people apparently really like having chore lists in video games. I don't know why this is. It's always something that is confusing to me, but apparently for a lot of people, let me show you guys something. For a lot of people, this is content. Like, they have a list that says, do 10 dungeons. And you go and you do 10 dungeons, and then a check mark shows up after the list. I'm just going to put an X. Ah, good. I did something. Then the list says, do 10 sellers. And you go and you do 10 sellers, the list puts next, like, ah. And then after you get 9 of these, they reward you, and they give you a couple of rewards and whatnot, and you move on to the next one, and so on and so forth. Well, let me tell you something. I don't actually like this. I don't think this is interesting. And the first thing that people told me, well, Rurikhan, if you don't like it, you don't like season content. Why did you even try it? And my reaction was like, well, I guess I should never expect for video games to innovate in any way, shape, or form. Right? We just don't expect innovation at all. We don't expect companies to get creative with the objectives that they're going to give players. No. How dare you? How dare you expect creativity from companies? That is completely, that's just unreasonable. Like, okay, look, I like the base game. And that's another thing that I want to make perfectly clear. I like what I've played of Diablo 4. There's a reason why I took a break from Diablo 4 when I got to a point where I felt like, okay, so all of this stuff that I'm doing, I'm going to be doing again when the season launches. So rather than burning myself out, I'm going to take a break. And then when the season launches, I'm going to jump in fresh with a brand new character, and I'm going to have a good time. That's literally the way that I was thinking about this. That's it. That's all of the things about, like, oh, you went away from the game. It's like, yeah, I took a break so that when I came back, I'd be fresh. I came in perfectly willing to just be like, okay, it's not going to be the best thing ever. What I didn't expect is it's literally just a to-do list of things that I don't feel like doing. Like, people are criticizing me when I say, well, what if I don't want to craft 5 elixirs? And people are like, just go craft them. It's like, yeah, of course I can go craft them, but what if I just want to go do dungeons? This is such a weird thing. It's like, this game, when you reach the end game, because like if you're doing the campaign, that's one thing. You're doing campaign, you're expected to do side quests, do all of these things. I understand that. You do the side quests, you get rewarded with story, you get all of these things. I get that. When I finish that, it's like, okay, the game has these activities that you can do, like Hell Tides, Tree of Whispers, dungeons, nightmare dungeons, in this case now, malignant dungeons, all of these activities. And I'm like, good, I want to go do those activities. But the game is like, but listen, you want to advance your battle pass? Go craft 5 elixirs. I'm like, I don't want to go fucking craft 5 elixirs. I'm not your bitch. You don't get to just tell me what to do. Like, what the fuck? I don't like that. And people, another thing people told me is like, oh, Rurikhan, like every game with a battle pass is like this. That's a lie. I completed the Exoprimal battle pass just yesterday, the day before. I didn't have to do any of that. I just played the game and the battle pass unlocked. Playing the game was fun. That's what I wanted to do here. I just wanted to play the game. I just wanted to play the game. That's it. What the fuck do you mean? People are just like going crazy. It's like, no, man, this is the way that it is. It's the way it's supposed to be. It's the way that it is. And you need to accept it. And it's like, it's almost like the aliens, like one of us. It's crabs in a bucket mentality. But anyway, I was willing to like tolerate all that, do the chore lists, you know, the dungeons that don't let you kill the final boss, all of these things that I complained about in my video. In the grand scheme of things, they bothered me, but I was like, whatever. This that happens right here is what caused me to not do it. Sean Dupre, thank you very much. Souls, tip of the hat. Appreciate support. Thank you. But this right here is all you need to see. Let's see if it counted. Like, notice how all I wanted to do was to see if this dungeon that we had completed counted towards the season objective. Now, in order to do that on console, you have to press the touchpad. Once you press the touchpad, it goes into the map. Once you go into the map, you cycle once to the left to go to the season. And when you go into the season, the activate premium thing shows up. But the UI is not particularly responsive. So I'm pressing X to like move things along. And then, boom, instantly. One click, transaction processing, boom, done.
What?
And then I was like trying to cancel out of it. And the game's like, no, I'm just going to crash. Game crashes, activates the battle pass. Me. Premium. Which, by the way, going into that menu is something that you are kind of required to do like every 5 minutes while you're playing the game. So what that tells me is if you're expecting your players to be checking this menu at least every 5 minutes, and it is your decision that every single time that you go into this season thing, you're going to automatically select activate premium, that is a design decision. You're not gonna convince me like, oh, it's a coincidence. It's like, no, by default it should be on top of season journey, because that is the thing that players should be clicking nonstop during the first season. But no, they put it in there, and then there's all these people saying like, oh, you're just dumb. You're so dumb. It's like, yeah, it's a coincidence. It's just a coincidence. It is like, this is absolutely a deliberate design decision. You're not going to tell me otherwise. It is what it is. And the way that I just tapped it and it instantly activated, triggered it, unlocked everything, is like, wow. Fucking wow, dude. Woo. But yeah, dude. And here's the thing. People were telling me that like, oh, you're the only person this happened to. I've been receiving notifications all day on this thread of people that had the same problem. Same thing on the video where I talked about this. Bunch of notifications from people that did the exact same thing. And this is what kind of like, you know, because it's one thing if you make a lackluster season. I don't have a problem with that. It's like, it's whatever. Maybe the next one, it'll be better. It's whatever, okay? In the grand scheme of things, I might complain a little bit, but I'll tolerate it. It's whatever. I have a high degree of tolerance for video games at this point. But when you do something like this, I was like, nah. This just shows you everything that you need to know, as far as I'm concerned. Now, I also want to make it clear. If you want to keep playing the game, it's like what I say shouldn't really matter to you if you just want to keep playing the game. It shouldn't matter. Why are you trying to convince me to play the game that I don't want to play anymore? It's like, just play the game. Just play the game and be happy. It's like, what? What do you mean? Even gacha battle passes aren't as boring as the Season 1 journey. I don't know. I don't play gacha games, so I wouldn't know. What is different when you don't activate it? Okay, so a lot of people also don't understand this. Lancelot, thank you very much for the souls. Tip of the hat. Appreciate support. Someone on Reddit proves it auto highlights the active battle pass. Afterwards, it goes to Season Journey. Yeah, it does. So if I was to log into the game now, it would go into Season Journey. That it's programmed to do that. But one of the things that somebody is asking is like, what's the problem with this? Because a lot of people don't understand. They aren't aware of the fact that you can actually save the battle pass that you get for another season. You don't have to spend it on the first season, which, like I said, I want to play Remnant 2. I want to play Baldur's Gate 3. There are other games coming in August. There's Starfield in September. Like, there are all these games that I want to play. I'm not going to have as much time as I wanted to play Diablo 4. And therefore, I'm like, okay, I'm going to save my battle pass for another season where maybe things will be more interesting. Maybe I will have more time, and I'll use my battle pass then. But because of the way things work, Blizzard is counting on you to activate the battle pass by mistake so that they can get another however many dollars a battle pass costs later down the line. Angry Scott's Dad 23, thank you very much for being grossing with us for 27 months as a long beard, you absolute Giga Chad. Tip of the hat, appreciate support, thank you. Actually, Kegrin, it's no longer Everspace 2, man, because Wayfinder is right in there, right at the same time that Everspace 2 comes out. Rurikhan will stream Baldur's Gate 3. I want to. It's just August is a rough month. Hey, Rurikhan, if they reverted our cooldowns, would you play more? No, because I didn't stop playing because of the cooldowns. Like I said, I didn't stop playing because of the nerfs. I think that the nerfs were bad. They make the game more boring. And unlike what some people like to say, they don't make the game harder. They make the game more boring. Because I also had people tell me, like, oh, you just don't like challenge. I'm like, motherfucker, do you see the games I play? Are you insane? I don't like challenge. I love challenge. I was one of the people that said they should nerf Sorks and Necros during the beta because they were too easy to play. I love challenge. The thing is, the changes they made to the game didn't make the game more challenging. They made it more boring. That's the thing. Did you get a free season with a pre-order? I got a free season because as a content creator, you got to buy the Digital Deluxe Edition. Unless you're on the Blizzard Good Boy list, which I'm not. You buy the Digital Deluxe Edition because it comes with 5 days head start. And as you will notice when it comes to YouTube, being one of the first to cover something is one of the most important things. It's not the most, I mean, it almost is the most important thing, but it's also important for you to be knowledgeable about what you're covering, but you guys get the idea, right? Sunset Pier, thank you very much for being grossing this for 14 months. Tip of the hat. Appreciate support. Rurikhan, I know your current sentiments towards the game, but will you come back for the expansion? No. Like I said, also, Victor Andre Angel, thank you very much for making Valerie DeWitt grossly incandescent. Tip of the hat. Appreciate support. But as I was saying, no, I'm not coming back for the expansion because, like I said, it is one thing when you do a product that is subpar. I can tolerate that. It is a completely different thing when you have a design decision that is deliberately predatory. And I will find it very hard for anyone to convince me that what happened to me yesterday was not deliberate. Okay? I will find it very, very hard for you to try to convince me that what happened there is not a deliberate design decision. So it's like, and here's the worst part. I would love to come back for an expansion because I liked the story. I've heard people say that they didn't like the story of Diablo 4, and I was like, I'm sorry, I disagree. I think the story of Diablo 4 was friggin' sweet. I liked it. Is it the best story ever in video games? No, but it was a good Diablo story, which is what I wanted. And it was accompanied with good Diablo gameplay, which is what I wanted. So I loved the game. Hell, I find it interesting that a lot of people seem to think that I'm hating on it for clicks when my review of the game was positive. I gave the game a pretty good review. The only thing I said was that I don't think the game is worth 100 euros that I paid for it. But for 70 bones, yeah, I think I said it was worth it in my review. But no, it's not enough. You gotta praise it with all of your might all the time. You can't criticize it. You can't step out of line. You gotta be a good boy. You gotta do your chores. And I'm not doing it. I'm not doing that for any game. I'm not doing that for any game. I will praise games when they do good things, and I will criticize them when they do bad things. And I've done the same thing for the Souls franchise. I've done the same thing for Monster Hunter. When there are things I don't agree with, I will fucking criticize them. It's just that simple. I have a responsibility to my audience. I put out a positive review of this game, and Blizzard is making changes that are making the game worse, and they're also applying predatory UI tactics. You better believe I'm going to inform my audience for whom I put out a positive review for the game. Like, are you crazy? Of course. It's insane. It's just that simple. It is what it is. Rurikhan, there's still a lot of problems with D4. The biggest one for me is power. When I got my wolves to +10, it's skill. The wolves had a hard time killing a normal mob. Yeah, that's what happens when you nerf every class into oblivion. The thing is, was it hard for you to kill that normal mob? Because that's the defense that I get from a lot of people. Was it hard? No. It was probably just fucking boring because your wolves aren't dealing any fucking damage. So you're just sitting there with like your +10 wolves hitting this fucking regular mob, not even an elite, and the mob's just sitting there laughing at you. He's not even being a threat. He's just laughing at you because you can't deal any fucking damage. It's not hard. It's boring. Oh, man. Very off topic. I believe you said you played No Man's Sky on PSVR 2. Would you recommend that about the PSVR 2 in general? Look, the thing that I said about the PSVR 2, I had a whole stream talking about it. It's like this. PSVR, imagine that gaming is a watch, right? Gaming is a watch. Your PC or your console is like a Casio watch. It's a quality watch. Tells the time. It's perfect. You can do your gaming on there. The PSVR 2 is a Rolex. Do you need it? No. Is it cool? Yeah, but you don't need it. There's nothing really in PSVR that I would say is a killer experience. Having said that, No Man's Sky is pretty fucking cool. So if you have like a pile of money and you don't know what to do with it, sure, get a PSVR 2 in No Man's Sky. It's fun. Friendly reminder that gamers themselves made Diablo Immortal a massive success. You're all hypocrites. So I played Diablo Immortal because I wanted to be able to speak on it from a position of authority. This is something else that people like to lob at me. They're like, why are you still supporting Blizzard? It's like, would you rather me to be completely ignorant so that I wouldn't be able to articulate the points that I make in my videos, so that I just come out like one of those stupid-ass journalists that come out and say, Elden Ring's too hard! It's so hard! And then people ask, well, what exactly about the game is hard for you? And they go like, it's so hard! They have no arguments. I need to play the game if I'm going to have arguments. That's the way this thing fucking works. I'm not a gaming journo. I'm not going to be criticizing in depth a game that I haven't played. I might criticize its monetization, but I'm not going to be able to actually, speak with any degree of authority if I don't experience the fucking content. That's the way it goes. Tyler Reeves, thank you very much for being real synchronous for 22 months. Tip of the hat. Appreciate the support. Thank you. Your class, your way. They need to do something about Eternal Realm. I play that with my casual friends. I got some bad news, bro. They don't give a fuck about the Eternal Realm. This is Season City now, dude. What kind of watches are the other VR experiences then? I don't understand your analogy. Do you mean that PSVR doesn't really have exclusives? That's not what I'm saying. So, like, think of it like this. Imagine that you want to buy, let's go with the PlayStation 4, for example, and you're like, oh man, I want to buy the PlayStation 4. I don't know if there's any games on there that are going to be good for me. I can instantly tell like Bloodborne. Bloodborne's one of the best games ever made. It is worth it to get a PlayStation 4 to play Bloodborne. You know? Because, you know, it's just a fantastic title. Right? I don't have one game right now that I can tell you that does that for PSVR 2. No Man's Sky comes close. But you can play No Man's Sky without PSVR 2. So there's not one game that I can be like, man, this game makes VR worth it. That's the point that I'm making. And I think I can say that for pretty much any VR device. I mean, I haven't tried all of the other ones. I only have the PlayStation one, so it is what it is. Funniest part of the first chat was one of the designers saying this game needs storage pressure. Oh, man. Someone had the take that they nerfed all the classes and the patch was intended to kill the Eternal Realm. It's possible. I mentioned something similar to that in my video as well. I do believe that a part of nerfing the Eternal Realm is to push people towards seasons. Most definitely. What is the Campfire all about? It is a damage control campfire, and I'm just curious to see what they're going to say. Like I said, I don't think there's anything they can say that is going to change my mind in regards of the predatory decisions that they've made for their UI. I'm not sure if I should do the playback speed ×2, because sometimes that glitches the stream. Yep, it is. So actually I'm going to slow it down a little bit, and then now back to normal. Okay. Now we should be good. Should be closer to where we were. People are going to get fired over this? I doubt it. Because, again, you guys need to understand, like, there's currently 1,900 people watching this live stream, which, by the way, you guys can all hit the like button. It really helps me out, so thank you for doing that. But in the grand scheme of things, 1,900 people is not really that much. I mean, it's a lot of people. But when you put it into context with the amount of people that play Diablo, it's not that much. Let's see how many people are watching the official live stream. There's 11,000 people watching the official live stream. So if we combine my stream plus you guys, that'll put it at 13,000 people. Plus, let's say that there's a bunch of streamers streaming this. Plus, there's the Twitch stream as well. Let's go ahead overboard and let's say that there's 200,000 people watching this right now. Those 200,000 people are not that many players in the player base, okay? This is a game that is played by millions. Millions. This is not that much. That means that a lot of people just straight up don't care. They're leveling their characters right now in the seasonal realm. And God bless them. I hope they have a good time. I really do. It's just the amount of people that actually care about this, it's a lot smaller than what people give it credit for. Miss Tummy Giggles, thank you very much for the souls. Tip of the hat, appreciate support. Like, one of the comments that I had on one of my videos where I made the claim that, like, if there's 30% of the community that is aware of all of this shitstorm that is happening, that is a huge number. I believe that it's 10% or less of people that are involved and that know what is going on, that are aware of the backlash that is happening. And somebody in my comment section said, "You're so dumb. There's this thing called the internet. Are you stupid?" And it's like, yeah, there's this thing called the internet. Guess what happened when they opened up the season realms? They were packed full. A bunch of people couldn't even play the game. We overloaded the servers. That's how many people are watching. That's how many people care. They're crazy. Do you honestly think millions of people are still playing? Yes. Millions, plural. Definitely. 100%. How many people are the casual working type who can't watch this at 1 p.m. on a workday? Exactly. And not all of those 10% are going to quit playing. Of course not. And they shouldn't, because there's a lot of people that are genuinely still enjoying it. Why would you quit? If you're enjoying it, don't quit. Like, because here's the thing. A lot of times people, they look at something that a content creator is doing and they feel the need to emulate him. You don't need to emulate me. You don't need to emulate my values. You don't need to, like, do the things I do. You shouldn't. You should think for yourself. If you're having fun, if you're playing this with friends, play it, enjoy it. But what happened was, neither me or Wada, it was me and my friend were playing the game, neither of us was liking it. Like, when we finished the stream, we were having a conversation about, how bad the experience was. Like, it was fun because we're playing together. That was about it. The only fun part about that stream is that was me and Wada hanging out and having a good time. Don't emulate his hairline. Bro, my hairline is perfect. Perfectly receding. Classic Rurikhan doing strawman arguments. You're going to have to be a little bit more specific than that, but yeah. Joseph F. Diaz, do you think Microsoft buying ABQ will make ABK do any better? Will it just double down on bad practices? Thank you very much for the souls, dude. Appreciate the support. Tip of the hat. I don't know. I'm gonna be real. I don't know. Because I used to think it was going to be a good thing. But to be honest, like, I was one of the people that played, what was that game that Microsoft put out? It was not great. I forget. I don't know. But Microsoft's been putting out games, and a lot of those games haven't been coming out all that well. So I don't know if Microsoft has a decent control of their studios. So yeah, I don't know if it's a good thing that Microsoft is buying them or not. In the grand scheme of things, I genuinely just don't care at this point if they buy them or not, because I'm just not interested in keeping up with Blizzard, because it's just been too much disappointment. Torque HP, thank you very much for the souls. Tip of the hat, appreciate support. I'm glad you enjoy the content, dude. Are you Portuguese or do you live in Portugal? Because I know that water brand. Claro que sou português. Portugal, caralho. I'm Portuguese, yes. Rurikhan, you're old enough to remember how good games used to be. They just aren't anywhere near as good. I disagree. I think that there are a lot of fantastic games. 2023 has had a lot of fantastic games. I completely disagree with that take. I think we've had a lot of good games in the past, yes, but that doesn't mean there aren't good games now. There definitely are. Chief Hellhunter, thank you very much for the souls. Tip of the hat, appreciate support. Blizzard is known for listening to their player base. It seemed that way, almost. Excited for Baldur's Gate? Yes. Yes, I am. Blizzard can't even start their Campfire chat on time. See, I always get people telling me that I'm late. Look at Blizzard. They're late. Oh, man. Rurikhan speaking Portuguese is always mind-boggling. A lot of people don't know I'm Portuguese. Gaming's only bad if you stick to AAA microtransactions, L-hole. True. I mean, like, look for instance. 2 games that came out very recently. Fantastic games. Tears of the Kingdom. Fucking amazing game. I don't care. There's a bunch of people out there that for some reason they're detractors to Tears of the Kingdom. It's whatever. If it's not for you, it's not for you. But Tears of the Kingdom is a fantastic fucking game with hundreds of hours of content. It is amazing. Another game came shortly after that. Final Fantasy 16. Fucking amazing game. Awesome. It's like there's good games out there, which is precisely one of the reasons why when we have a season like the one we're having for Diablo right now, Season of the Malignant, which when they announced the features of the season, my thumbnail even had this, which was me saying, that's not a whole lot of content for a season, but, you know, I'm willing to give it a shot and whatnot. And I came in, I gave it a shot, and I was like, this season is not what I want out of the game, and guess what? There's a bunch of other games coming out. Why the fuck would I play this season? That's the thing. People just need to start doing that. If there's, you know, there's all of these options that you have, don't play the games where you're not having fun. Just don't do it. Don't have a PlayStation, don't have a Switch, only have enough for a PC, so we don't have much good games. Let's see, PC games. That's the thing, like, I don't... When I was able to earn enough money to basically just, you know, buy consoles and stuff, I never really thought too much about, oh, I need this thing to come on this specific platform. It's like, oh, if I like this game, I want to play it.
Evil is receding from Sanctuary. A new festering curse now spreads.
Joseph F. Diaz, thank you very much for the souls. Tip of the hat, appreciate the support.
More dangerous.
Say you're manipulating. Wait, let me lower this. Say your manipulation video is true. How much do you think the devs will roll back their patch? I would argue anywhere from 50 to 60% across the board. If it is true, I don't know. Rurikhan, what you think is the actual worst part of the patch? I mean, if I take away the whole UI thing that we already talked about, it would be the fact that the way that you progress the battle pass, it's just a boring ass chore list. It's boring. Like, that's it. That I don't have anything else. It's just fucking boring. I don't like it because it's boring. Arnold Chan, thank you very much for the souls. Tip of the hat, appreciate support. I almost missed your thing, sorry. I see them not implementing any meaningful changes or respecting our time clearly shown. I say whoever wants to stay, we boycott Season 1, stay on Eternal Realm. Do whatever you want. Let's see what they have to say.
I am director of
their mic's not looking good.
Diablo. I'm joined here by Joe Shelley, game director of Diablo 4, and Mr. Joe Pipora, the associate game director.
By the way, Pipora replied on my Twitter
We
post.
have a lot to talk about today. Obviously, we have this Campfire chat because we do want to talk about the patch that just released this past week, which is patch 1.10. We've seen a ton of feedback. We've heard a lot of feedback.
Have you?
And so we do want to go through, you know, a lot of the points of feedback that we've been hearing, and at the same time the patch itself. The biggest thing that, you know, to kind of like kick us off here, I think we want to, you know, obviously acknowledge everyone's feedback in regards to reducing player power. We know it is bad.
Watch them pull it back. Watch.
It is not fun, and it's something that, you know, we ourselves know that it's not the greatest play experience for players out there. We do want to explain why we ended up doing it within the actual patch, and then of course we also want to talk about
nervous
what
as
we're
hell.
trying to achieve specifically with this patch and with the changes that players ended up seeing. And then separately, we do want to also talk about how we don't
feel
plan
bad
on doing a patch like this ever again. We have most definitely heard the feedback from the players on that front, and we do want to talk a little bit about, you know, our philosophy, our own internal statements that we're setting for ourselves for future updates for the game itself. And then, of course, we do want to also talk about how we can talk better and communicate with the community better in regards to patches and updates coming to the game, and what we can do to improve on that. So I know that the first thing we do want to talk about, though, as I said, was talking about, you know, why we ended up doing this in this patch. And I do want to throw it over to Mr. Joe Pipora over here to talk a little bit more about that.
Sure. So I know that we've talked on stream before about, I know, our intentions for Diablo 4 being a game about choice. And part of that is ensuring that the various class options feel that they've got a place in the meta experience. And that kind of goes to some of the changes we made in 1.1. Now, Adam already called out that we've heard the feedback with regard to the patch, and we know that reducing player power is never a good experience in general. And I want to talk through like sort of some of the things that brought us to where we are today in terms of decisions we were making and why. So a few of the really big changes that were made as part of 1.1. First, really, I guess, to cooldown reduction. We changed the amount of CDR that players can get as part of in the affix ranges and items that are rolling for them as they're going through the experience. CDR is one of the, if not the most powerful stat in many ways in Diablo 4. And the reason for it is obvious. When you're able to get CDR,
it's also one of the most fun stats.
Class mechanisms, you're able to get effectively like instantaneous like active skills. So like, you know, that can give you like unlimited resource, it can give you unlimited movement speed, give you unlimited damage resist, and it begins to dwarf the effectiveness of other options when you can start trying to take these things into account. Now, we know that blasting through content with those things is really fun, so it feels really, really painful to have to take some of those things away. And we certainly don't relish the idea. That was the original thinking for these sorts of bits. One of the reasons why we think that these builds are very prevalent at the moment is based upon like the nature of some of the endgame content we have in Diablo 4. In particular,
You mean
about,
One-Shot
Nightmare
City?
Dungeons, especially.
I think he's
The
talking about
reality is that Nightmare
One
Dungeons
Shot
are
City.
dramatically overtuned from where they actually need to be based upon the place they fill in the role they fill in the game itself. So tier 100 Nightmare Dungeons are excruciatingly difficult for most players to, most classes to be able to actually get through. And as a result, it begins to kind of winnow the opportunities and options that players have when they begin to engage
This is
in content of that
hilarious.
tier, such that you really do require, you need to lean on very, very specific builds, very specific setups, with access to things like near instantaneous cooldowns for some skills in an effort to actually like make it through those spaces. And that was never really the intent of that content. And we see that, right? Players are using Nightmare Dungeons as ways to kind of like level up their glyphs, ways for them to gain experience and loot as they're progressing up. It's largely like a level up. It's progressing once you get into world tiers 3 and 4. But they've taken on an outsized role as sort of this new end-game chase opportunity for players who are looking to really challenge themselves. And we love that we want that kind of content and we want that experience for those players. And we feel like we have done a reasonably good job of that with Uber Lilith in the game. But we don't feel that like tier 100 Nightmare Dungeons fulfill the same role at all. Just the nature of the content type doesn't actually work well as that kind of pushing opportunity. So one thing we actually plan on doing, and we'd hope to get out as part of this release, we're going to get out very, very soon, is we're making a reduction in the difficulty of some aspects of Nightmare Dungeons to kind of retune some things. And the goal here is to say that, we think that roughly where you are with like a Nightmare Dungeon tier 70, that's kind of where we actually want the difficulty to be for a tier 100 as players are going through the experience. So there's still a thing to push for, but it's more reasonable. And as part of this exchange, we know that players really like kind of blasting and pushing hard for these sorts of things. They feel like big achievements. We are going to be looking at creating a new content type, a new endgame content type that's going to be more directly meant to address those sorts of players and give people more things to chase. That's part of the commitment to the live services, to make sure that we're always adding new things like this for players to go and try to kind of chase after, to kind of maximize and use their builds in fun and interesting ways. So that's another really big thing. Next, we made a number of changes to the sorceress skill, sorceress builds in general. That sort of ended up having a net impact of like really reducing their effectiveness with some of their most powerful builds at the moment. And the goal at the
Did
time
you test those
was to try to
changes?
bring their builds back in line with one another, so that we could start trying to bring everything up at once, as opposed to having these things as they are. And this actually leads to a really good conversation about the idea of balance in general. I said before that Diablo 4 is a game that is about choice, and that remains our goal. That's our guiding light. We're trying to make decisions on balance and design in general. And sometimes we don't always get it quite right. And I think that we see that with some builds that are just simply not performing
testing is
as they
for.
need to be, because they just don't have the right interactions with the kind of content or skills that you actually really want to use.
You mean like minion necromancers? Their Paragon points
this is an
not
example of,
fucking
like, when we're
working?
thinking about
That?
our goals in terms of creating this balanced experience where there's lots of interesting choices for players to engage with. We cannot make balanced decisions without kind of accounting for the way that players are going to feel about those things who are playing those classes.
This is why you
If
test
the goal
things.
if our goal is to create an ultimately balanced experience, without regard for how much fun the player's having as part of that exchange, that's ultimately that would be like a failure on our part to not kind of think about things. So we have plans that I know that we're going to talk about a little bit later to kind of address this more clearly. But understand that we've heard this, and we have plans in the very near future to address these sorts of things. Another bit that speaks to this is the change.
We have
made to
plans,
vulnerable
guys.
damage. I
Trust
think
us.
that, there are a lot of players in the community who like kind of dove deep into a lot of our systems in Diablo 4 and kind of see that vulnerable damage is a really outsized role that it plays in terms of a lot of build making. To the point where it feels that, you'll get to certain parts of content and creatures sort of need to be vulnerable in order for you to feel that you need to that you can damage them.
Yep.
This is something that we're very aware of, and we made a
So you
reduction as
nerfed
part
it.
of the 1.1 build that reduced player damage in general, because most players rely on many builds, I should say, rely on vulnerable damage.
And vulnerable damage is still one of the best stats in the game, by the way.
This is something we also need to talk about. Vulnerable damage is far more potent right now than we actually want it to be in general across the game. I think I've talked about this before. And
Right now or
we need to make
before?
a number of we need to kind of bring these things back in line. But this is a more complicated conversation than simply just saying we can take a bonus damage to vulnerable creatures number and reduce it by 40%.
Wait, they don't have chat
kind
on
of
their
the amount of
stream?
damage you can accrue across different sources, and have that be the
don't?
way that we solve this problem. Really, I think we all know that the ultimate problem with damage to vulnerable creatures, the fact is multiplicative stacking on top of the base vulnerable damage, which is already multiplicative on its own. Like this is the reason why the stat plays such an outsized role in a lot of player builds. We're going to need to move that to an additive place, but we can't do that without making a number of other adjustments to critical strike damage, to the way that overpowered damage is both calculated and dealt to creatures, and the availability of these things across various builds. There's lots of builds that rely on
Our
vulnerability
damage
that bounce around the idea that the
calculations,
damage is also
they
multiplicative.
broken.
So a number
They
of
no
these,
work.
a number of their balance and tuning changes will need to be
literally
made
what he's
in order
saying.
to be able to bring vulnerable back in line with some of the other options we have out there.
Oh,
So,
God.
this is how we're kind of thinking about these things moving forward. We want to start trying to be a little more inclusive of all of these decisions.
They're
when we
listening to us.
begin
That's why they don't
considering
have
each of these
chat.
balance adjustments we want to make, rather than being in this iterative place where we're making small adjustments to a number of different things along the way, with an end goal in mind of where we actually eventually want to be. We want to be trying to consider what the experience is going to be like from moment to moment, rather from update to update and release to release, to get things in a better spot. So while we do believe that having our season roll gives us the opportunity to kind of reset our meta and change a lot of things, that obviously has an impact on internal players, the way that they kind of perceive the characters they're still playing in that space, and it can be disruptive for players who found a particular playstyle that they're really excited about. So that's the.
This
I know
is
that
why
Joe,
I
you're
said
talking about some
that
of these things, and
respecs
it's,
should be
this is an awkward
free.
handoff, but I
No.
just wanna make sure I don't handoff. I'm sorry. But I want people to understand that we do hear the things that they're saying. We do plan on making changes in the near future, and just kind of
I'm
thinking
scared
philosophically
when he
about
says
how
he
we
wants
want
to make
adjust these
changes.
things
You
moving
should be scared.
forward. And with that, I guess Joe, would you like to chat about your thinking?
Yeah, so I think it's a great point, a great lead in here. We want, as Adam mentioned, we want to talk about. We kind of talked a little bit about how we got here. We want to talk about what we're going to do about that. I mean, I think one of the really good points you made is like, vulnerable is, for example, vulnerable is like a must-take stat, right?
Yes.
And it would be better if it wasn't a must-take stat.
But you
more of a
nerfed
build
it,
option.
and
The
it
game
still
will be
is a
better
must.
when that-
A must-take stat.
But
So
if along the way to getting to that, the game is less fun,
yes,
we're not fulfilling.
but you
our-
still did it.
our obligation to players, right?
That's right.
So I want to talk about our.
I'm sorry,
mission
I'll turn
statement
myself
for the
down now.
live game.
I have them on
And I think
max.
we have a perfect. So there are four parts to this. We're going to start with the first part. We want the live game to always have a wide variety of viable builds to discover, to put together, to acquire the items for, and to optimize across all 5 of our classes. Second point. Every season should introduce new items and powers that keep the game fresh and increase build variety. Moving on to the third point, the live game should also have continually evolving end game content. And that content needs to have high monster density for powerful builds to mow down, and it needs to have activities that challenge your build.
And this is why we
And,
nerfed.
you were just
everything.
talking about how, while Nightmare Dungeons, I'll get to the fourth point in a second. While Nightmare Dungeons are technically challenging your build, they're challenging your build in some ways that are not very fun, right?
Yeah.
Like being
Yes.
CC'd all the time.
Yes.
Yes, that's correct. Going
And-
through 20 tiers of Nightmare Dungeons where every monster can one-shot
By the
you,
way,
and then if
these
you
are
get
all
clipped by
things they
one,
are
they're killed,
acknowledging,
you're permanently snared,
but
right?
they haven't
Right,
fixed
or
before they
actively
nerfed
frozen. Like,
everybody.
these
They
are-
just
these are
nerfed
not
everybody,
things that
and now they're
the-
just talking
the
about
Nightmare
this.
Dungeons system is doing particularly well right now in terms of making challenging content.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's why it's so important, your call out that we plan to introduce additional content that fulfills that, that part of the mission statement to challenge your builds. if we can go back to the screen, I got kind of sidetracked, but I think it was really important. And of course, ultimately, what we're trying to do is make the game more fun for players, right? Players.
He
are at the
almost
heart of
forgot to say that he
everything we're
wanted to
doing.
make the game
And
more
if the
fun.
game is not more fun for players, and we're not making the game, if players can't believe that as the game evolves, it will get more fun, then we're not accomplishing our goals either, right? And so the other point I want to go to here is a change that, Adam was talking about. How do we make sure that the next time we do a patch, we don't have, this doesn't happen, right?
Yep.
And so I want to talk about we call it a key process improvement. That's like a weird jargon term.
KPI.
A change that we're making that will help us avoid this situation. So I think we have a slide for this. When we make, and this goes, again, this is right along what you were saying here. When we make changes to increase build diversity, our goal, going back to the mission statement, is we want to have a wide variety of viable builds, right? So when we make changes that have the ultimate aim of increasing build diversity, we need to pair those changes with compelling alternatives. And that means that there are some builds that'll be overpowered. And we can't nerf those overpowered
you failed.
builds.
Mission failed.
Without providing compelling alternatives for players to pursue.
That's right. It means that things like when we identify that there are a few individual like meta builds or stats that are like really, really powerful within preseason or within a season, that until we have created those other options and redesigned things around the nature of these and made sure that we've lifted up other options and brought everything in line, we're not going to move on those changes. There's going to be always situations where there are extraordinary outliers, that we're going to want. They're usually relying on like actual bugs that we need to address. But when it comes to like trying
Like
to
the
bring
Hammer
things
of the
back in line with
Ancients.
one another, we want to be able to make sure that we're doing those. When we make those decisions, we have a bevy of other options and alternatives available for players to engage with at the same time. So if players see it as taking like a toy away, that we're giving lots of other toys or lifting up other toys, to make them more viable as part of the exchange.
Yeah, and that those toys are equally exciting.
Yes.
So let's go to the second point of this here. When we make changes like this, it's important for us to make them at predictable times. And Adam's going to talk a little bit more
achieved
about
this
our
mission.
communication strategy in a bit. The start of a season is an especially good time for meta changes to happen because there's a big refresh, everyone is rolling new characters, and there's new seasonal content, right? And changes like that will also appear in Eternal at the same time. And the third point here, as Joe alluded to, there are certain situations. We saw a case where
Gonna bring up the
we
druid?
had a skill that could do 10 to the 37 damage.
Is that the druid?
In cases like that where the damage is literally breaking the game or crashing the servers, we'll still react to those situations. But that doesn't change the first point here in terms of allowing builds to be overpowered. And I think, one of the things that's important for to recognize and state is that ultimately ARPGs, or some people call them hack and slash games, are about power fantasy, right? And they're about us inviting players to break the game to some extent, not to crash. There are lots of ways to interpret the word break, but and find fun toys that we've made, do crazy things with them, and we need to make sure that we aren't trying to punish players for doing that, because ultimately that's the playground we built. That's we built the game that's like, go find crazy stuff, and we need to make sure that when players
Adam Fletcher's
take
got
that
a
invitation,
1,000-yard stare right now.
that-
Look at him.
we're not punishing them for that.
He's got the 1,000-yard stare.
Yeah, and I know when we were talking about at least the Nightmare Dungeon stuff beforehand, and we can go into it in a little bit more detail once we get to the stuff that might be coming down the pipe here. The one thing I think that I wanted to really highlight on was, obviously we did this patch and we made these changes and we brought character power down, player power down essentially. That in itself was also supposed to be paired with these nightmare dungeon changes that you know, where Joe was actually talking about earlier. And you know, it's something that we've learned throughout this process, is, as you guys were talking about, that, you know, we have ultimate visions for something that is further down the line, and doing that all together at once during those moments, as opposed to doing them over time and whatnot, just leads to a better experience overall for players. And that's something that we most definitely will be doing as we build out, you know, future updates and patches and so forth. Of course, a key component to this is how we communicate to players, and, you know, there is been a lot of feedback in regards to, like, hey, it would have been great if we knew some of these changes were coming down the pipe, and you know, it's a hefty amount of patch notes. We could have digested this like over a few days beforehand or a week beforehand. So one thing we do want to commit to right now is that we do plan on going forward always providing patch notes and communicating these patch notes through streams like this, through Campfire chats or developer update live streams beforehand, well beforehand, like, you know, at least a week before the actual update hits.
Why? So that you can get the feedback from us?
I know sometimes we're
so that you can get feedback from us?
Maybe potentially squeeze
so that you can get feedback from us? Chat is disabled for this live stream?
Up until like the last second.
Is that why?
The nature of production of how we are.
Who cares?
But I will say we do plan on sharing those no matter what to the community going forward, from here on out, through a stream or written through blog or something like that beforehand, well beforehand, before players can actually get them get into game and actually try it out on their end. So at least we can hear feedback and you guys can actually digest the information beforehand. In fact, we're do
very
actually
interested
have,
in
of course,
learning
feature
what you have
updates
to
here,
say.
that we do want to talk about here really
yes,
quickly.
please.
But one thing that we will commit to right now is that next Friday, so exactly 1 week from now, we'll be back on a live stream, because we will start with that live stream where we will be talking about our next patch that will be coming to Diablo 4. We'll talk a little bit about some of the details
next
here,
Friday,
but we'll go
I'm
into
busy.
more
I'm
detail
playing Remnant 2.
next Friday specifically. But we will be back on here to kind of go through the whole entire patch notes with everyone beforehand, so everyone has a better expectation of what they're going to be seeing in the actual update, and they
By
can
the way,
talk
guys,
to
remember
us
to
through
subscribe,
chat, through
bell
devs,
notification,
through
so that you're
social media,
notified,
through
and
Reddit,
check
through
out
our
Remnant
forums,
2 when I
etc.
stream it.
beforehand, before the actual patch hits. So we will get times and remind everyone, of course, throughout the week that we will have another Campfire chat to talk about patch 111, since we just shipped 110, 111. But we do want to talk a little bit about patch 111 today, just because there are some items that we are aware of that we know will be of interest to players, specifically when it comes to things that they've been asking for, and at least it gives you guys a little bit of an early preview of some stuff that's coming down the road. I think one big thing that everyone has been kind of talking about as of late from this current patch is like some of the sorcerer and barbarian items and stuff like that, and how we've obviously tuned a lot of classes down, and there's questions of like, hey, is there any changes in the future for those two?
Yeah, we're taking a long look at a lot of the sorceress and barbarian aspects that aren't being like utilized very well right now, and trying to lift a lot of those back up. There's going to be a wide range of like legendary power and unique item
but we're gonna
for
buff them back. Don't worry.
In particular, we're taking a look at a lot of things, but we're really honing in specifically on sorceress first, and then also getting a lot of barbarian updates in there at the same time. And this is for 1.1.1.
Correct.
So the very next patch and cycle.
Yeah, and we expect that patch, obviously if we're having a live stream now, next Friday, we expect that patch here in the next like couple weeks or so, so at least you guys can get an early preview on it.
Yeah, on that Friday, we'll be talking a lot about like the specifics of all of those changes and kind of hearing what the community says.
Yep.
It feels like
in fact, the Nightmare Dungeon
Who's
items
here next
that we were
Friday?
just talking about just now, that's actually, we're planning planning on actually rolling that out in a hotfix specifically, and that is something that we actually plan on rolling out later today. So we'll have more information on the Nightmare Dungeon changes that will be that we talked about earlier that will be coming out later today via hotfix. Another big thing that we've talked about in patch notes, because we've toned it down, and now we're kind of and we had mentioned that to players that we did plan on bringing it back up. It is monster density in Nightmare Dungeons and Helltide. So I know that you guys had some plans and so forth related to that.
Yeah. So I mean, going back to the mission statement I mentioned earlier, a key part of the live game is having high density areas for players to mow down, right?
Key part of ARPGs, right?
Key part, of which Diablo 4 is one.
That's true.
Pardon my grammar. And so we're going to be increasing the density in Nightmare Dungeons substantially, and we're going to be increasing the density in Helltide as well. Now, with the Nightmare Dungeon changes across the board for Nightmare Dungeons, all Nightmare Dungeons will get more dense. The Helltide change, there are certain areas of Helltide that are extremely dense, right?
Yeah.
Like the tar pits, for example, is very dense. Areas like that probably won't get more dense. And part of what we've been doing here at the same time in terms of these density changes is making sure that we're making performance improvements, like looking at player skills that are taking a lot of time on the servers, getting those into better performance, so players have better frame rates and stuff, and fewer stalls, and all these kinds of things that make the game more fun to play. And this also helps us increase the number of, like, more monsters, more players, more stuff going on. And we know that the density in Nightmare Dungeons in particular needs to go up. And so we've been working on that to make sure that we can accomplish that. So density in Helltide will go up, not uniformly. Density in Nightmare Dungeons will go up uniformly, and these will be substantial increases.
Yep. Which I know players have been talking about constantly.
Yeah.
Wanting additional density on those.
Right, rightly so.
And a big topic right now is inventory concerns. We've heard from players. I know we've talked about gems and so forth actually becoming materials in Season 2, which to help out with some inventory concerns specifically. I know you guys have information, at least in regards to stash, and what might be coming in 1.1.1.
Yes. So certainly the gem change is still coming in Season 2, like you said, but we need more stash help now, right? And so in 1.1.1,
I talked about
we're going to be adding an additional stash tab for players so they can store more aspects, more malignant hearts.
You get one stash tab
conversation
and be fucking happy about
it.
it.
Like, do we feel that we're ready to do this yet?
You get one stash tab, one and done.
Conversation and the stash tab conversation, like the engineering team's been working really, really hard to be able to, like, make these adjustments possible for us. Like, there's more that we're doing. This is now a never-ending conversation of, like,
one stash
what else
tab.
Can we do? What else can we be doing to try to improve the experience?
Yeah,
but like
one.
we've definitely heard these two concerns, and we're just really happy to be able to bring them in as early as 1.1.1.
Yeah. Oh, and I should mention that along with the stash tab, we're making a small change to
there's more.
Elixir stack size. We're going to bring that up to 99.
You can stack up elixirs.
Awesome. Obviously, like with new starts to seasons, and if we do have these types of changes that occur within the patch that may change, whether it's the meta or the balance of specific things, there's been questions related to
no, they're adding the tab. You still have to pay for it with in-game gold.
Pretty expensive on.
You thought it was going to be free? You're crazy.
Their own personal economies with gold and so forth. I know we have respec changes that are also coming with the game itself. You guys probably know more specifics on the numbers.
Yeah, I mean, this really goes back. Joe was talking about our commitment to choice earlier, and it also, but I think it also goes back to, when we say in the mission statement we want to have a wide variety of viable builds. Great,
Minion
but if you can't
Necromancer.
switch between those builds, then it still feels punishing,
Wait,
right?
what?
So we're going to bring respec costs down quite by about 40%, quite a bit.
Cool. Yeah, so it should help out with people that
I love. Where
wanna
are
switch
all
over
the
to a
people
different
that
build
told
and
me,
so forth,
Rurikhan, you're crazy. The
or,
respec cost is fine.
They do have to adjust over to
Oh,
another build. They get the
okay.
option of actually
Yeah.
being able to do so, or have an easier option of being able to do so.
And that'll be in 1.1.1.
And that'll be in 1.1.1 as well. So, and then I know, lastly, like
40%
40%
respec cost reduction so that you can spec out of the builds we nerf easier.
And the leveling curve kind of goes through, especially like post like 70 or so. We've been looking at the player journey and how they've been getting up to 100. I know there's some changes that you guys are looking at in terms of like experience and so forth from that end.
Yeah, I mean the short version is we want to make leveling from 50 to 100 faster. By adjusting XP. I don't know if you have.
Yeah, I realized when I
thoughts
was,
on
I was realizing when I was
This
talking
is why
earlier
they
about the
nerfed
changes they made.
XP
Obviously, we
in
also
the
made
recent
change to,
patch.
to XP gain when fighting creatures above your level, and I failed to mention this discussing it.
Yeah.
So the original intent for that was we found players basically sitting at like fighting creatures like 3 levels above them and never felt like they were really challenging themselves beyond that. We wanted to stretch that out a bit further, but that
They
went from,
literally nerfed the
25%
XP
bonus
in
to
this patch.
50% bonus. And we knew that density changes were coming online, so we thought about this a little bit, but I read a lot of feedback, like afterwards in particular, that just made it sound like people thought that we were just trying to make the game take longer, which wasn't actually the goal, but realized that the 25% to 15% change did constitute a nerf.
The lies, the gaslighting. You
we
are
are not
making
trying
the
to slow
game
down
be
the game.
slower.
No,
Are you
and to that
kidding
point,
me?
like we have a vision for how long we want the game to take for players. We realized that it's taking a little bit longer than that, than what our vision was originally for.
So that's why you nerfed it? It's taken too long, so we nerfed it, made it take longer? What the fuck do you mean?
So we are looking to like really to readjust
Absolute
the XP rates for those
oh my God,
areas,
dude.
because we aren't looking to like have you hit
lies.
this
Are you
absolute
joking?
brick wall when you hit like level 70 or something, right? Like there's not like these moments where you're going to feel like you just can't, or 75. Like we don't want you to have this feeling that you just can't make meaningful progress, that we're just artificially holding you back. That's never been the vision or the goal.
Yeah, so
right?
this is
It
why
ended
you
up
nerfed
working out
the
because
XP.
It wasn't.
And
the
damage.
Players weren't earning XP at the rate that we had originally expected, is what it really came down to. So these
So how do you
we are
nerf it?
making changes in this regard
Yeah.
to kind of bring this down
Yeah.
a bit. Yeah.
And I mean, you've seen, certainly we did things like increase the XP bonus for Nightmare Dungeons a while back quite substantially.
Yeah, and Whisper Completion, Helltide Count,
Right.
chests.
my
Now,
God,
notwithstanding
dude.
that, there are changes to XP related to addressing, the power leveling case, because we don't have like group up, have fun with your friends, like power leveling each other. The only case that we think is not very fun is the case where one person is standing at the entrance to the dungeon and the other person is having all the fun killing monsters.
Yeah.
And so
Let me tell you something,
know,
Blizzard.
when we look at
this
the
is the player's
balance
decision. If a
of
level 1 player
the
wants to
XP
stand at the
changes
door
in
of a
1.0,
dungeon to
we
have
think
somebody
that
that's level 80 or
additional
99 or
changes
whatever
need
the
to be
fuck
made
kill a billion
make the
mobs to
game
give them the
faster.
XP, that's none of your fucking
Yeah, we want
business.
level 1 to 100 to feel like an achievement, but not like a job.
Yeah.
Right. So like we want to make some adjustments to make sure that it feels fun, very achievable, obviously within the season timeline. But yeah, so we are going to make some adjustments. We'll be talking about more probably next week in terms of with more specificity.
Yes,
Yeah.
very soon.
Yeah, so again, we'll be back on stream next Friday to talk about all the details of the changes, including the barb and like sorcerer changes that Joe had mentioned, along with other changes that we are.
I've been
preparing
boosting
right
and
now
getting
for the patch
boosted since
itself.
Diablo 2.
That patch itself is supposed to
It's
be
fun.
hitting in the next couple weeks. Obviously, if we're
God,
doing the stream
dude.
on Friday, it means it's coming pretty darn soon for after that stream. So, but we did want to make sure that we got in front of players to actually talk to them about everything, and we plan on doing that going forward if we ever have one of these larger patches that actually makes some.
We
pretty
wanted to make
significant
sure that we
changes
got
to
in
the
front of
game.
players
We'll either get in front of you guys via
to talk
stream,
with
or we'll
them.
end up posting
Okay, guys,
about
talking with
them
you
earlier so
is
that you guys
very
get a better
important
idea
for us.
of what's
Talking
to
with
come,
you is
for
extremely
those.
important for us.
I know that we
okay?
do want to take some questions, a bunch of questions actually from chat and so forth. I know one big question that has always kind of come up has been about
We want to take questions from
leaderboards
chat?
and so forth within,
What?
and
What
the
do you
expectation
mean?
Of when those might be
We
coming
wanna
in.
take questions
I
from
know that,
chat?
ideally, we're aiming for season 3 for the leaderboards in itself.
You wanna take
I don't know
questions
if you guys
from
have
chat?
any like additional information or like additional insight onto those from your end.
Yeah, so one thing that's really important to us for leaderboards in Diablo 4 is we don't think that like tying this directly to Nightmare Dungeons or content type exactly like that is going to make a lot of sense because the variety of the nature of the system. So we want to make a content type that kind of partners directly with.
So these are the
leaderboards, so
Twitch
that you can be judged in
questions.
kind of like this kind of more even playing field. When you go
Are
into
these
that
the Twitch
experience.
questions?
But that is content that we are actively in development
fuck
on.
about
and are
leaderboards,
excited to
bro.
try
Your
to,
game's not
get ready
working.
for season 3.
This
So
is like
we're gonna be making
my car.
It's
not working. The engine's broken, and Blizzard's talking about, bro, I got these sweet rims for you, though.
And we're looking for season 3 for that.
fucking rims.
Question from
My car, the engine's
you
broken.
stupid walrus. Is Uber Uniques? What's the future? The math.
This is
they
a good one. I want to hear about this
don't
one.
exist, so I don't think it's a good waste of resources.
Uber Uniques. Yes, tell me more.
Sorry, I was really distracted by the walrus.
Okay.
Can you read the question again?
Uber Uniques.
Oh, right.
What's the future? They mathematically don't exist.
They don't.
So I don't think it's good to waste resources on them.
Yeah,
in
no,
the
it's not.
future.
It's a waste of fucking time.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Worthless fucking items.
You know,
Delete
Uber
them.
Uniques are designed such a way that they are a huge spike of power, and we're receiving feedback, and we understand the feedback on some of
So
them.
wait,
But,
oh my God!
They represent a huge spike of power, and as such, are not expected to be part of builds necessarily.
Oh my
One of our
God,
goals
dude, this is
underlines we don't
hilarious.
want players to feel that one of these are mandatory that you must find in an effort to bring your build online. From the ground up, we kind of made the decision to say it is okay if we want players to find these, but we don't want them to expect to find these. You know, which is a difficult place to balance in terms of drop rates when you think about these.
Oh my God, that's so
Now, right now, I believe that they are
is
exceedingly
beyond
rare.
ridiculous.
We do want them to feel very, very rare. But I suspect that as we start moving into future seasons, we do want to find more ways for players
In
more
future
opportunities for players to get,
seasons!
chances at these.
Come back
And,
6 months
I
from
imagine
now.
We'll talk about
okay?
that soon. But I would suggest
We'll
that
give
the
you some
current
new
drop
Uber
rates
Uniques.
are probably not going to be the drop rates forever. We'll probably make those a little bit more common, a little more likely to be found as time
Gaslighting.
goes on.
The apps, bro.
A big topic that I'm seeing just pop up in chat and so forth. A lot of comments about crowd control. If there's any plans or ways that we're looking at addressing crowd control here in the future.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier in the stream, well, I think we both talked about it. We think that when you have high density of monsters on screen and you have a lot of elites, the crowd control, the tools that you have for crowd control are not, need to be better, basically. And some of that is going to be adjustments to things that feel unfair. And some of that is going to be adjustments in terms of your tools. I think that we'll be able to, this is something that we'll be able to speak more to in terms of specifics and how we're going to address that, but we agree it's a problem in the future. Yeah.
Question from Urka. Hi, I'm so bad. IK Rekote. I tried. I'm so bad with names. I'm sorry. When will loadouts be added?
Yeah, it's a feature that the UI team is very excited about and something we've talked about a bit internally. We don't have a timeline for the idea of loadouts just yet, but it is something that we're continuing to actively talk about. When we have more information to share in terms of like when something like this could potentially be added to Diablo 4, I'm sure that we'll talk about it.
Barra0 says, what is the time frame on 111? It doesn't seem very clear. Is it before the middle of the season? How long do I need to wait for Sorcerer and Barbs to have their changes and be playable? It is much sooner than mid-season. As I said, it's only like a couple weeks away, and by a couple weeks,
Couple of weeks.
Very, very soon. Like if we're
you'll
doing
get
a
to
stream
play
on
your
Friday,
class
I would expect it within a couple
in a
days
couple
after
of
the
weeks.
stream.
We have to
Okay.
provide some.
You like Barbs? You
If
like
we say
Sorks?
anything too specific today,
Couple of weeks.
production will choke us
Yes.
out. So we have to be very careful about the language we use. But yes,
Oh yeah,
very
sure.
soon.
Yeah.
Only because
Very soon.
with patches themselves, of course, there
Very
are.
soon.
We're on a lot of different platforms and everything, and of course, those go through certification. If a certification gets pushed back or whatnot, then we obviously need to readjust schedules. So it's hard for us to actually put a specific time on it until that actually occurs. But very, very soon.
Yes.
BoldB79, are there any plans for some changes for experience between, say, level 75 to 100? This is actually something that we just commented on, but the journey feels a bit dull. There are several events, but only nightmare dungeons to provide challenge. World bosses, Helltides, and Whispers are a good idea, but just too easy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's so we talked about, so I guess there's two real parts of this. Like, so are we making changes to the XP progression for players while they're moving through, like World Tier 4 in this case? And the answer is yes. We are going to be looking at making changes to that, and we'll talk more about that soon. Mm-hmm. And then secondly, do we feel that there are the right number of like milestones for players to engage with? Enough goals to kind of like consume while you're also just leveling up, and enough content to kind of
Oh, fuck your goddamn chore list
as you're leveling
goals.
up in these world
Fuck
tiers.
'em.
And I think that the
fucking
answer
said it.
is
Fuck
no. That we know that there's more things that we need to add to the game, particularly for World Tier 4.
More
chores. But really, just once you get into World Tier 3 and 4, just like find more opportunities and more content and new things for players to do as they're leveling up through those spaces. And we do have plans for those things, and we do have thoughts on stuff we want to add in Season 2 in particular, and some things we're looking to continue to talk about moving forward.
Yeah.
But yeah, we recognize that there's more we would like to add to that journey to kind of create more variety and more moments of challenge as well while you're progressing. And not just at 100, but all along the way.
Podoc24 says, what are your plans to adjust loot drops? This I'm going to add on to his question after I read it. It feels very frustrating to grind for days without ever seeing anything close to an upgrade or finding the right aspect. Even worse, when you finally do it and it's a terrible roll. Slightly, I'm also going to modify that and mention target farming, which has also been a topic within the community. I'm not sure if you guys
Oh my God, they're going to talk about target
any
farming.
plans and so forth for that.
So I think there's a couple parts of this as well, right? There's the
Joe's
idea
like, what
of
the
I
fuck you
grind for a
just
long
asked me,
time to get
Adam?
an item, and the item is done to upgrade. And particularly, when you're in World Tiers 3 and 4, where you start dealing with sacred items and ancestral items, where you're kind of dealing with this larger bucket of eye power range, this can certainly tend to be true, unless you're looking for specific kinds of affixes, you're looking for particular kinds of roles, right? So there's a couple things. One, we know we want to try to reduce the difficulty of like kind of comparing and looking at a number of different items all at once and trying to get a better sense of that. These are things the UI team is very passionate about, and conversations are ongoing.
Oh, I know all about the UI team's passion.
Like things like loot filters, object, things like that. There's the idea of like how does the progression of itemization feel, particularly in World Tier 4, while you're leveling up there. And the systems team has ideas on things they would like to include. It's too early for us to say exactly, to like really like lay them all out just now. But there are ideas and things we want to do to kind of improve the feeling of progression through the ancestral tier, so that you feel like there's more thresholds and there's more opportunities to kind of get upgrades as you go. And then lastly, there's this idea of target farming. So legendary aspects are a place I think that we can afford to do more. We know that players are looking for certain aspects. They're trying to find certain things. They're trying to find particularly unique items. I think is often the case, right? They want their Tempest Roar, whatever it is they're looking for. They're looking for that thing. We do have plans in Season 2 right now to have more content
Season
you can
2?
try to target farm in order to find certain unique items. And I think there's a natural extension
2.
of that to figure out like what's the right way for players to be able to find an
2.
easier method of getting at some of the aspects they might be looking for as they're progressing.
Game's
through it.
broken. We'll fix
that
it
is
next season.
That is
Don't
something
worry.
the rewards and systems teams will be thinking about and we'll be able to talk about soon on stream.
Yeah, and I do want to note, like, I know we have an update here coming for 1.1.1, which we just talked about is in the next couple weeks. There are going to be other patches before
Oh my God, dude.
Season 2 and so forth,
Yes.
with additional
Yes.
changes
Yes,
and items
yes.
that we just haven't noted.
Guys,
I just want to clarify specifically on
there's
that. We
it's
do have
coming.
more patches.
The
beyond
fixes are
1.1,
coming.
Before Season 2.
You guys have
to
no
address a lot of
idea
feedback,
all of the
that we're
fixes
receiving
that
from players
all of the
and a
fixes
lot
that
of
we have.
opportunities for us to actually
You have
do
no
so.
idea.
Can we get some sort of matchmaking system to help with partying up with random people or group finders? I know we had talked about group finders before. I know this is something that
this is
the
such a
team
nothing burger question.
has
bro.
obviously received
What a
feedback
nothing
about,
burger question.
like helping out with like the social systems and so forth within the game. It is being evaluated, I know, and the teams are looking at it. We just don't have an exact timeline of when those are actually coming in specifically from that end. Are there going to be changes with arm? Oh, sorry, I forgot to. That was Andy for Man was the last question. Bean Pot 10 says, are there going to be changes with armor regarding survivability? Hardcore is almost unplayable on Sorcerer with one shots from corpse bows and low innate.
Dude,
due to
Couple of
loading.
weeks. Couple of weeks.
Yeah,
We're
I think
fixing it.
survivability, especially on Sorcerer,
It's a couple of
is
weeks.
something that
They said this.
The changes that Joe was talking about for
Yeah, in a couple of weeks.
that we'll be talking about in more detail
Yeah,
next
maybe
week.
one more.
is
Not
one of the
now,
things we
a
want
couple
to
of weeks.
include in that.
Just wait.
We-
Can't you
we-
wait?
we,
Don't you have
recognize
time?
Yeah, we also identified there's a
We
few.
respect your
There are a
time.
few
Couple
outstanding
weeks.
monster types and abilities that are doing that are killing players a little more frequently than we expect. And like we're looking at creatures that explode when they die, for example, claim an awful lot of lives, right? Creatures that can chill, claim an awful lot of lives, right?
Or charging creatures, we've also learned.
And charging
creatures.
yeah.
I've seen a lot of reports about that, and I know, and you're about to say
Which I think have been nerfed like twice now. Too,
Well, there's a bug fix on Beast Charge in particular, where Beast Charge could deal
Be sure to
damage,
stay after this because I'm going to go over everything
even
they
if you
said. I'm
interrupted the
taking
charge
notes.
or if
Listen,
you
guys.
died.
I'm
I
taking
see.
notes right now.
Well,
Okay,
that's
we're
a
going to
good bug
talk
fix.
about all
So,
of this when
we're,
it's
we're
done.
identifying some of these like really, really difficult affixes, really, really difficult Nightmare Dungeon affixes, or like really ones that claim lots, like a disproportionate amount of player lives as part of that. And we're looking at those all at once. It's Sorcerer survivability is absolutely an issue, and we're going to be talking about it more in the 1.1.1 conversation next week. But there's also this idea of like there's a lot of things out there that are just doing a lot of like what feels to the player in the moment pretty cheap, like unfair, like just I sort of just died, don't really see what happened.
By the way, guys,
And
you
we're
can hit
looking
the
at
like
more of
button.
these situations and trying to
Helps
figure out the
out.
right
Thank
places
you.
to make adjustments. We don't want the game to be easy. We don't want we don't want you to be able to walk through every encounter, and we want the game to feel deadly at times. We want you to feel like you had an opportunity to kind of evade or deal with those situations.
In regards to someone, Zeus DNA says we'll be seeing the hotfix notes before the hotfix comes out today. Yeah, we'll get the notes up. The deployment hasn't started and it's not starting until later this afternoon, but we'll get the notes up so that players can see it, and we'll be mentioning it so that players can actually read through them and so forth.
Right.
This is a pretty large hotfix in terms of like items that we're actually fixing and the Nightmare Dungeon stuff that we had just talked about.
Yep.
Templar Knights asks, question, can we change the codex in such a way that we can upgrade the values with founded legendary items? This could reduce the demand to stash, avoid aspects laying around, easier adopting
Oh
player
my
tier
God.
balance stages, but we still want to find items and increase codex values.
Yeah, so we know that one of the key things that players are carrying in their stash right now are lots and lots of aspects.
Yeah.
And we're talking about ways to address that. That's an interesting suggestion. That I think it's sort of
literally
going
in
toward the
Diablo
same
3. What the
direction here,
fuck
which is
do you
like,
mean an
how can we
interesting
address
suggestion?
The case where
This
your
is
stash
literally in
completely
Diablo
filled up. 3. Certainly
You are
having an extra
joking!
stash tab
This is a
will
joke!
not hurt that problem, but I think there's more that we'd like to do in terms of
Bro.
aspects.
Yeah, it's certainly something that we've been discussing internally for a while. I think part of this is just how much fun is it to be able to extract an aspect from an item and be able to maintain that role? And then how much is that fun so fun that it's worth like some of the inventory pressure that comes about as a result of that? And that's a conversation we've had within the dev team.
It's
We're
not.
going to continue to talk about it, but we know that there's definitely a lot of improvements we can make to the codex.
It's
of power
not fun
for
at
them to kind of,
all.
like, be embracing
Anybody who tells you
some of
this is
these
fun
other,
is a
like, affix
fucking
extraction
moron.
systems.
What do you mean how much fun
Question
this
from
is?
DRJ16.
Does
Has the
anybody
team
in this
considered how
chat thinks this
certain
thing is
nerfs,
fun?
like
There's
weapon
4,000
cooldown
people.
reduction,
Does
are so
anybody
much
here
more
thinks this
impactful
is
for
fun?
certain classes than others?
Oh yeah, I love having my fucking
Yes,
inventory
the
full of
team is
Lego
definitely aware that
affixes.
some of
Yes,
these-
I love
some of
it.
these
It's so
changes
much fun.
disproportionately affect.
It makes
the
respecking so much
vulnerable damage changes
easier.
Disproportionately affecting,
What is wrong with you?
There is we're definitely aware that some of these changes disproportionately affect some classes and builds more than others. And this goes back to my earlier point about when we're going to be making changes like this moving forward, that we know we're going to have this have an overall effect of reducing certain effects down, or rather reducing certain like powers or affixes or whatever it is down to a place where we want people to use the baseline to kind of build from for other parts of the game. That when we do those things, it's going to affect these different players in different ways, and they're not going to enjoy that if we've ruined their build in order to try to
Not accidentally, we
weed the garden and
intentionally
get things in a
ruined
better
your
place.
build.
Like ultimately, we're going to be trying to do a lot more situations where if we're going to take a thing away, if we're going to update something, where it's no longer going to be as valuable as part of your build. We want to provide a lot of other options as part
Next
of that.
time it'll be
Make
fine,
sure we don't
guys,
leave
we
the build
promise.
with a gaping, like, giant hole in it as a result of the change that we made.
You're
so
full of
this
shit.
this is going
I'm sorry.
to, again,
You're
it's
full of
going
shit.
to
No,
mean that
sorry.
moving forward, when we're making like larger scale balance and tuning adjustments, we're going to do those a little bit more slowly as a result, in order to make sure that we're embracing all of these other like components to give a lot of options all at once when we make a change.
Yeah, it goes back to the
Disagree.
change we
Hard
had on the
disagree.
screen before, right? We're going to provide compelling alternatives
Yeah.
when we make those kinds of changes.
That's a punchy way to say it.
Punchy way. Kennywa says, question, why did you guys increase the cast time on stuff like leaving dungeons?
Oh,
Feels like
good
you're
one.
trying to slow down the game by making us waste time for something that might feel useless.
We can look at that. We'll continue to evaluate that change. It's a fairly small difference. I know that in an ARPG, small amounts of time can be meaningful. We did add the reset dungeon button back in. It does require that you're outside the dungeon, and so there's kind of a loop there.
Bro,
Loki5123 asks, are you going to
I
add
just decided it was
more
gonna
than
be
6 or
5
7
seconds
items a
because
season?
fuck you.
Are there plans to add more? The feeling is they feel like they would want more items per season that are actually added in.
Yeah, we've always said that we wanted to take in the feedback from the players as we kind of got these seasons out the door. So season 1, we add the 32 Malignant Hearts, which I think have been pretty cool. Some we're going to be looking at the balance, some of them to make, kind of like lift them up, make them a little more exciting in some places. But broadly, we're pretty happy. They generally are. And then we have our uniques and our legendary items that we added with the season as well. I think if there is, if we see that there's like a lot of interest in trying to get more of these, we can start trying to think about how we can inject a few more legendaries into the game with each season, or a couple more uniques potentially into the game with each season. But we want to continue to see like kind of what the feedback looks like. This is a good example of people asking for more. So yeah, good to know.
guys, we want to
separately
see
from
the
that,
feedback.
Like, are you guys looking at potentially?
We wanna see the
like,
feedback.
reworking
Yeah,
or redoing
thank you,
some
Dev.
things?
So that
Feedback.
means patch 1.1.1 is kind of in that vein of trying to like get these things into a slightly better place. And we do want to go back over our existing legendary power library and identify the ones where they can afford to be lifted up with redesigns and changing the way that some parts of them work, so they better fulfill the stated purpose in terms of where they're supposed to sit in builds. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities for that along the way as well. It's not going to be the only way we inject like new fun in the game isn't going to just be through the season mechanic, isn't just going to be through the addition of brand new legendaries uniques, but also going back over the existing legendary powers after we see players use them a little bit more, making adjustments accordingly.
Question from Panda Mousy and Mormra. Same question, actually. What's your plan for resistances? Right now, they feel like a wasted stat. Do we have any changes to resistances?
That was
might be
like a
changing
season 2
maybe
thing, I think
sooner
they said.
or later, or how's that going to work?
Resistances fall in one of those categories where if we need to make a change to the way that resistance damage is, or rather, the way that players use resistance to mitigate damage from certain sources. And it's going to be a far-reaching change when we actually go through and make this, which means that we want to be able to take the time with it and do it properly.
Yeah, right now we didn't want it to do it now when we nerfed your survivability. We didn't want it to fix resistances now because that just wouldn't be
Shadow
right.
Shadow Mun, sorry. Can campaign bosses be added to the pool of dungeon bosses that we encounter? I feel like campaign bosses are underutilized.
I think there could be more opportunities to fight some of those campaign bosses in the future. I can't comment further on exactly how that will look, but I agree with that sentiment.
Sounds good. Okay.
Joe has often said this, so like we definitely want to make sure we find the right ways to bring act bosses.
No
in.
comment.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is actually a question. Party Cannon 30. Hi there, guys. Can you? Thanks for the information. My question is about crashes on PlayStation 5. Is that a known issue? We are aware of some issues on consoles, specifically Xbox, PlayStation, like that maybe.
You mean the two
crash
consoles
issues
the game is on?
From their side. I do want to note, like I know with 1.10. There was a bug fix towards a specific memory leak that the team was trying to identify and find, and they actually did find it, and it was addressed there. There was actually an additional fix in 1.11 because I've seen a lot of questions, whether on Reddit and so forth, about PC performance and so forth, and even on like just performance in general,
Broken game.
that will be addressed there. And I know that the engineers here are still actively, troubleshooting and figuring out like specific situations that players might be running into.
Broken
of course, if you
game.
have like more information on those, please post in console bugs on our forums, and give as much information as possible, because a lot of those repro steps on our side are sometimes really difficult, and it helps our teams out, helps
I
our
fixed
QA
my
teams
memory
out,
leak this
to be able
morning.
to see if they can actually repro the same type of issues.
Plug that
players
bitch
are
right
having.
up.
Do you guys plan on introducing more ways? Oh, sorry, this is Mr. I don't want to butcher that.
Okay.
Do you guys plan on introducing more craft / modify gear? Currently, only gold has value, and only one stack can be rolled.
More ways to craft and modify gear.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, we do want to add more options for players to be able to kind of modify the items they're getting. What we have really in the preseason and now in the season 1 state is still very like a baseline experience in terms of item modification. We are looking at more opportunities in the future to allow players to do more with their items.
10 years
So
from
yeah,
now, we'll
that
fix
is
it.
that is a plan for the future.
Yeah.
The Almighty Striker says, why does the Necrominions why do they take ability slots? It could be easily a different button. How many of
They take an
Necrominion
ability
builds
slot.
have beat Uber Lilith?
They take an ability slot because you have to
Lots of
summon
questions
the
about,
priest.
is there... we already answered the...
You should have just asked, why do
the dropper
Necrominion
for
builds
uniques and so forth. That
fucking
was the
suck?
second part of the question, but I guess the question mostly is about Necromancer minions and ability slots. Also, I saw other questions related to companions, whether they're
Which also
Druid
suck.
companions with wolves or Necromancer minions. If there's any changes or plans for those to actually potentially get a little bit more tweaked up.
Yeah, this is something we do care about. One of the things that that sounded dismissive.
Yeah, we care about a lot of things, but go on.
This is something we care about.
I was just trying to get to another point, which
We
is
actually care about
there's
this
some
one.
really cool stuff in some of the Malignant Hearts
Oh,
that
yes.
affects this.
Yes.
In terms of like, kind of getting credit for additional abilities.
Yeah.
We do care a lot about the number of the sort of like ratio of ability to number of slots that it takes up, and making that as optimal as possible.
Yeah, that's right. We want to make sure that if you're going to play a Necromancer and you're going to
There's gonna
summon
be another
skeletons,
nothing burger
that
answer.
you are going to be...
You're gonna have a
takes
bad time.
That's the weight of an ability. Like it's the same as having an active. You need to like playing with it. It's going to take a little
It
bit of
is
space
an
on your bar.
active.
You don't get
You have
that
to
in addition
constantly
to a bunch of
spam it
other
for the
things.
skeleton
You don't want to have
priests.
skeletons on your bar right now. The idea that you'd sacrifice a lot of those skills in order to give you that extra space. And in terms of the viability of like minion builds at various parts of the game, there are some builds that are able to like get pretty deep into content, obviously, but I think there's still room for improvement in terms of like minion survivability and other conversations along those lines. That is something that's still happening. And then there was the other conversation, the question about Druid
Oh, my
companions,
skeletons
right?
were dying to
similar
normal mobs. One hit.
Necromancer minions.
Normal mobs are one hitting my skelly boys. Room for
Yeah,
improvement.
I think possibly. We see players. Actually, there are a few players that run like literally all 3 companion skills and use that as part of the build that they'll go after for their druid. And I think if there's likely room here to do more with companion skills, whether it rises to the full level of like a complete like spec. I think is going to be interesting, but I know that there's people on the team that are very excited about trying to explore more of this side of the druid over time. But we don't have there aren't as many interconnecting points for the way that you interact with your companions right now, and the way that like the skeleton army does for the necromancer, in terms of ways that you modify them and do more
Biggest
with them.
room at
So
Blizzard
there's,
is room for
I think there's some
improvement.
groundwork we need to do to like provide a lot more options there.
That's
but
a
something
good
that the
one,
team's
Group.
interested in. Yeah.
I'm going to do one last question here, which is, will there be better loot tables for like treasure
Oh,
goblins?
they didn't
any
talk
alternate,
about my massive
goblin
tweet.
types, specifically for those?
Yeah, I
Oh
think
my God, dude.
I think we loved how many.
Nobody
asked
asked them about what about that UI design where you just fucking
there's
buy
like
a
10 different kinds
random
of goblins,
battle
or,
pass out of nowhere.
14 maybe.
Didn't talk about
It's
that?
been a little while
No?
since I looked
Okay.
at that data in the editor. But we think that there's lots of room for there to be more fun goblin types in the future.
And in terms of the treasure goblins have a tendency to provide, we actually I had a conversation with the lead system designer last week, talking about this. We are going to be making we are going to be buffing like legendary drop chance, for example, from items that will appear from treasure goblins. We do want them to be to feel a little bit more exciting when the moment they drop.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I know we talked about a lot today. I just want to recap some stuff that we had mentioned today. Obviously, we've been hearing a lot of feedback regarding the patch, and we're telling you guys now that we completely hear you loud and clear. We don't plan on doing patches like this ever again, where we're not going to be essentially removing the fun and the player power from players drastically like this.
Yeah.
And if we ever do that, for any type of class, like a build or whatnot, we'll make sure that there's always some really good alternatives for players to actually be able to try out a different build.
I have experience with this, guys. In World of Warcraft, they would never do this. Ever.
Help out and give other options for players to actually kind of jump into.
Break specs? No, we don't do that.
We will ourselves do a better job of course, communicating back to the community. Again, what we're saying now is that
you communicated loud and clear. I saw the patch.
The community way earlier in advance, whether through a Campfire chat or through like a blog of some sort or any type of communication, so that you guys can get a better chance of looking at patch notes beforehand, seeing any type of changes that might be coming down beforehand. Because I think communication was key here. I think you guys not seeing what we were planning on doing and us kind of giving that vision.
But you remember when Adam Fletcher was like, "It's a chunker of a patch."
Response from you guys.
It's a big chungus.
Just provided that over to
chunker.
everyone and gave a little bit more of a heads up, I think it would have helped a whole lot there from that specific situation.
Well, also keeping in mind, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that's absolutely one part of it, and you were talking about it in a more full way, but I want to really make sure I hit on, like, one of the really great points of feedback that we've been seeing is like, why can you nerf things today and then buff things far in the future? Right?
Yes.
And so what we're saying is, not only is there a change to communication, but we're also going to pair changes like that together, so that we don't have exactly the situation that players have called out as unfair.
Yep.
What kind of an answer was that? He didn't actually say anything.
1-1-1 coming really soon. We are committing to a
next time it'll be great, guys. We promise.
Because
we're gonna
probably
balance
the same time. We'll confirm.
There's gonna be
More
other
than likely
changes.
It'll be 11 a.m. next Friday. We'll end up posting about the details over the next week.
Oh my God!
Just as a reminder to the community, and there we'll actually go through all the changes that we just talked about here into greater detail. Joe, I know, will end up providing greater detail changes on like the barbarian and sorcerer adjustments that we're going to be making based off of weeks from feedback. And then, of course, we'll also be talking about just essentially everything in the patch notes for that. Patch 1.1.1 will be coming out in a couple weeks. With us having a stream next Friday, I anticipate it being very soon or shortly after the stream specifically. So, and again, we do have a hotfix today that we will be rolling out this afternoon. We'll be having notes related to that hotfix here really soon, and there's a lot of changes in there, including the Nightmare Dungeon changes that we talked about today. So, again, thank you guys for the feedback. We most definitely hear you loud and clear. It's something that we wanted to address, and it's something very important for the team here. For us to actually address the community and talk to you guys more about it, and also change some of the ways that we were doing specific items or specific processes. So we really do appreciate the feedback. Of course, continue providing feedback.
We appreciate the
it's really
feedback.
Important for the game itself and for us to make a better experience for players out there. So thank you guys again for tuning in.
Thank you for the feedback.
We'll see you next Friday for the next Campfire chat to talk about patch 1.1.1 and all the changes that are coming up. Really appreciate it.
Okay. Let me just grab the Diablo 2 Resurrection soundtrack, because why not? So, like I said, we're going to be talking about everything that they discussed in here, because I didn't want it to be interrupting them all the time, so that we can talk about what was addressed. So if you want to hear more about me talking about this, feel free to stick around. Before we do that, though, I do want to check up on something real quick, because there were quite a few super chats and stuff. I'm going to be doing all of those that happened while they were talking, because I didn't want it to like, oh my god, Jesus, there's a lot of stuff. Okay, David Silva, thank you very much for the souls, tip of the hat. Richard Rosado, thank you very much for the souls, tip of the hat. I had to open my windows because of the horse shit I smell over here. Lancelot 652, thank you very much for the souls. We nerfed everything to fix vulnerability damage, genius balancing, tip of the hat. Joseph F. Diaz, they won't tell us, they'll do it via stealth nerfs. The real issue is what we told you. Thank you very much for the souls, tip of the hat. Dakudo, pressed X twice, accidentally activated Rurikhan's battle pass. Tip of the hat, appreciate the support. Cal B, wait, so they nerfed our damage and defense significantly, but also want to increase Nightmare Dungeon mob density on top of that? Yes. Thank you very much for the souls. Tip of the hat. Oh, you know that guy. Well, this ain't a place, a geographical oddity, 2 weeks from all patches. Tip of the hat, appreciate the support. Mylan Koilyukov, thank you very much for becoming grossly incandescent. There's a long beard, you Giga Chad. Tip of the hat. Appreciate the support. SuperChat Jake, what a wonderful world it would be if they just admitted they shipped beta. Took 3 months to finish the thing. Tip of the hat. Appreciate the support. Birdman777, they said they have no idea what you're doing. Idea for the Uber drops, make an Uber boss really painful defeat. It was a world event for said items. Tip of the hat. Appreciate the support. Did they add the effect where you teleport, you close the game, and you end up in Baldur's Gate 3? Yes, they did. Tip of the hat. Ox Killer Wolf. Appreciate the support. Gerald Gerardo, what's happening? Just got in. We were doing a stream of the devs. They were talking about stuff. Thank you very much for the souls. Tip of the hat. Blizzard, we have room for improvement from Forgotten Oath. Thank you very much for the souls. Tip of the hat. Appreciate the support. Thank you. Thank you all very much for the outstanding amount of support. Now, we have a lot of things to talk about, ladies and gentlemen. We have a lot of things to talk about. So, number one thing that they started discussing was how reducing player power, it's not that, let me just also do this. It looks a little bit better like this. Whatever. Reducing player power is not good. Okay? This is something that they want to make sure that they are aware that reducing player power is not good. This is also the reason why they had a patch where they nerfed everyone across the board into the fucking dirt and made Sorceress and Barbarian nearly unplayable, which, by the way, let me just remind you that this was a product that you paid $70 or $90, depending on which edition you purchase, or even $100 on release so that you could play the characters that you wanted to play. And they specifically said, we're going to make sure that we maintain the viability of builds. I remember them distinctly saying this at the start of the game, which is why they said we're going to balance the game properly so you don't have to worry about these respec costs. I remember because I was always bringing up the subject of like, hey, listen, these respec costs are a problem because Blizzard fucking sucks at balancing classes. I've said this from the beginning, and there was a bunch of detractors. There's people here in this chat right now that are saying I'm just an outrage monger. And it's like, motherfucker, I had a positive review of this video game, but that doesn't change the fact that I've always said Blizzard is fucking terrible at balancing classes in their RPGs. I have experience with World of Warcraft, Diablo 2, Diablo 3, and World of Warcraft throughout multiple patches, so I've had plenty of fucking time to experience just how fucking terrible Blizzard is at balancing classes. This is nothing new to me. This is exactly what I expected. All right? Listen, let me tell you something. I leveled up a pure minion necromancer, knowing full well that statistically speaking, I was going to end up with an absolute turd. Okay? It's just that simple. And guess what? Everything happened exactly like I predicted. And those of you that are going to bring up, oh, but Preparin made a build that works. Yes, with the Ring of Mendeln, and most of his damage is coming from other sources, except for the Ring of Mendeln procs. That's pretty much it. Pure Minion Necromancer is absolute dog shit. Okay? My particular build works because I'm using Shadow Corpse Explosion with Minion Necromancer, okay? These are things that I've predicted that I knew were going to happen, and it is that simple. Blizzard is terrible at balancing their classes. They've always been, and it doesn't seem like that's changing anytime soon. And the most hilarious part is how they say, we know that reducing player power is not good. Then why the fuck did you do a patch that nerfs everything into the dirt and did fuck all to compensate for it? Like, I read some stuff in the patch notes, like, for instance, we realize that Hammer of the Ancients has a bug and the edges are doing too much damage. We understand that by nerfing this, we're basically breaking the fucking build. They pretty much acknowledge this in other words, but they acknowledge that by, fixing this problem that exists with Hammer of the Ancients, we're making the build not viable in endgame. But we don't want the build to be dependent on a bug to work. You just don't want the fucking build to work. I can't speak about sorcerer builds. I don't know that much about sorcerers, so whatever. I know they're fucking busted. Their shit's not working. The point here is, this is a live stream for them to just basically show their face and tell you, yep, we fucked up with this patch. We're not fixing it. Interestingly enough, do notice that they say we're going to be fixing things later, which means that later you can expect buffs to both Barbarian and Sorceress, basically partially confirming my theory that there's going to be buffs coming in later, and these buffs, they're not going to go as far as to put you on the level that you were before. They also said they're going to be doing something about survivability. Basically, all of these things, they're not going to put you as powerful as you were before, but they're going to close the gap a little bit, and a lot of people are going to accept it. And when these buffs come, people are going to just straight up be like, oh, thank you, they're listening. Despite the fact that it was, again, a negotiation technique. It's just that simple. Exact words. Developers' notes. We recognize the adjustment significant decrease the Hammer of the Ancient Barbarian build, but we do not want the strength to be reliable on underlying bug. Yeah, I know. I remember reading that stuff. And basically, we fixed the problem. Your build doesn't work anymore. Fuck you. It's that simple. Now, another thing, they said, we are lowering cooldown reduction. And then they said something in the lines of like, we know that cooldown reduction is really good. We know that it pretty much feels mandatory for some builds, but we don't want it to feel like a mandatory stat. It's like, okay, you don't want it to feel like a mandatory stat. Now, I'm going to give you an example of Barbarians because I know that this is how Barbarians work. Barbarians, when they are doing the high-level dungeons, they basically need to rely on having their 3 or 2, I don't know if it's 3 or 2 shouts up. Those, you by default, without cooldown reduction, you can't have 100% uptime on the shouts. And if you don't have the shouts, pretty much any monster can one-shot your Barbarian into the fucking dirt on high-level Nightmare dungeons. So what are players doing? They stack cooldown reduction so that they can have as much uptime as they possibly can on their shouts so that they can do the high-level dungeons. Blizzard solution, we're going to nerf cooldown reduction because we don't want you to have 100% uptime on your shouts. And Barbarians are sitting there like, so, how do I play now? Well, see, now you pull a pack, and then you wait a couple of seconds until your cooldowns come back up, and then you use your cooldowns again, and then you pull another pack. And that's how it works. Which, it's just, it boggles the mind how you're not aware of what your own player base is doing to be able to tackle the challenges that you put in the game. Like, this is what people are doing. It's not just Barbarians, it's probably everyone. Like, I can speak in my case. For my Necromancer, I have like one skill that generates barrier on my Necromancer. I don't know if there's more. I think there's one where it's like, oh, if you hit an elite, we'll give you a little bit of a barrier. But like, there's one skill that if I use Bone Storm, gives me a barrier. Let me tell you something. If that barrier is not up, any monster can literally two-shot me. Any elite monster can one-shot me. In Nightmare dungeons. That's just the way it goes. And what I was doing was naturally, I was stacking cooldown reduction so that I could have as much uptime on that barrier as possible so that my character would not be one-shottable. But guess what? They nerfed it. Now I can't keep uptime on that. And if you've watched my recent videos where there's gameplay in the background, you'll see my Necro getting just fucking pummeled into the ground every other minute. Because of this cooldown reduction nerf. It's just that simple. There's probably other classes that suffer from the main problem. But the worst part about this is how they just straight up say, we understand that this is pretty much a mandatory stat for your classes. We don't want this to be a mandatory stat. And then you're like, okay, so what's the solution? The solution is we nerf this skill. And people go like, well, how do I play my class now? And their answer is just like talking around in circles, never addressing the actual topic. How do people play the game now? Not 2 weeks from now. Now. How do they play the game now? And the answer is nobody gives a fuck. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Now, another thing that they said, level 100 Nightmare dungeons are too hard, and that is the reason why people are relying on these stats like vulnerable, lowered cooldown reduction. And their answer to that is, well, we don't want level 100 Nightmare dungeons to be too hard. Okay, but they are hard now. and you patch the game, and people are no longer as powerful. So how do they do these high-level dungeons? And then they talk around in circles for another 5 minutes without actually addressing the fucking issue, which is, you nerfed our stats, our shit doesn't work anymore, how do we tackle these challenges in the game? And their answer is, in a couple of weeks. You want to know why it's in a couple of weeks? Because they're stringing you along. Listen, this is something that I have experience with from World of Warcraft, where it's a game that was specifically designed to string you along over long periods of time, which is why these changes take so long to do. Okay? That is why. Like, and when you're telling me, this is another thing. When you're telling me that, like, oh yeah, we noticed that level 100 nightmare dungeons are too hard. Did you not test this content before you put it into the game? Did you not test this? What do you mean, we've now noticed that these dungeons are too hard? You waited until players have been testing the fucking content for you? Like, what exactly are we talking about here? Do you have a QA department? Do you not have a QA department? Like, where's the testing happening in this part? Where exactly are you testing this? I'm just trying to understand, like, where's the testing happening where you figure out before this actually goes into the game, and like, hey guys, these dungeons are too hard, we should probably nerf them a little bit. But don't worry, they're going to be fixing those dungeons. Apparently even said that it might even be later today. So hey, guess what? You know, at that point, maybe things will be a little bit more acceptable. I still feel like players are basically going to be sitting around waiting for their cooldowns to fucking come up so that they can do things, because cooldown reduction ain't going to work no more. So whatever. And also another thing is that reducing Nightmare Dungeon difficulty doesn't change the fact that classes are boring to play right now, because one of the things that cooldown reduction does is it makes it so that you can use your abilities more often. Using your abilities more often is fun. You want to do builds that involve you using your abilities more often. As a matter of fact, one of the most boring things about Diablo 4, and I know there's going to be a lot of fucking casual Andes out there that are going to tell me that, like, no, it's actually fun. One of the most boring things about the way that Diablo 4 plays is the generator and spender system. That is your basic skills and your core skills. The way the game works from a fundamental level is you have a generator skill that you need to have in pretty much almost every class, and then you use that generator skill, that generates a resource for you, then you have a skill that spends it. That's pretty much how it works. This is why people are trying to come up with creative builds that skip all this. Like, for instance, my build, my current, well, not my current build anymore, but like the build that I had in the Eternal Realm was actually a build that did not use a generator, because my main source of damage was Corpse Explosion. Corpse Explosion was the skill that I was using for pretty much everything. Corpse Explosion, and which one's the other one? The Vines, the Exploding Vine, whatever the fuck, Corpse Mine. Those were the two of the skills that I was using all the time. I didn't have a generator, and guess what? It was way more fun to play than having to deal with this generator and then spender system. It's fucking stupid, okay? Like, really, let people just be free of the generator spender system. Let us combine skills in weird, fucked up ways, okay? Figure it out. Like, the fuck? It's like we got to introduce these massive guardrails. It's play your way inside our little tiny fucking sandbox that just keeps getting tinier and tinier and smaller until you can barely play anyway except exactly like we tell you to. Then they said we're adding a new endgame content that is going to be harder to make up for the fact that Nightmare Dungeon is not going to be any harder. It's like, listen to me, okay? Fix your goddamn game before you think about adding content, because we already know you're not going to test it. We're going to be the ones to fucking test it. So please make sure that classes are working properly before you release this content. Jesus fucking Christ. Sorcerer nerfs to bring their builds more in line with another. Oh, this part was hilarious, bro. The way that he just started talking about how, oh, yeah, we had to nerf sorceresses because we found that some builds were more powerful than others, and we didn't consider the big picture. So we just nerfed them into the fucking dirt. And now you're wondering, well, where was the testing? Where was the testing for the sorcerer changes? Was there any testing done? Or did you just like fucking threw darts on a board and just decided, oh, these are the nerfs we're going to do for sorceresses. This is the way that it's going to be. And you know, sorceress players just log in on patch day and just go like, wait a minute. What the fuck just happened? My class doesn't fucking work anymore. What is going on? Uh-oh. Oops. So, you know, that's another one. They realized that they were balancing without accounting for player fun. And it's like, look, this to me is not news, okay? Blizzard never accounts for player fun when they're balancing shit. They don't care. It's surprising, but it is what it is. It's one of those situations that tends to happen when you don't really play your video game all of that much. And then they said they have plans. They have plans to fix it. Okay, fine. I'm sure you will. Vulnerable damage was too good, which is why they nerfed it. Okay? They said vulnerable damage pretty much felt mandatory, so we nerfed it so that it wouldn't feel mandatory. And guess what? Because there was no actual testing done, vulnerable damage still is pretty much mandatory. You still want to have vulnerable damage. It's still one of the most desirable stats in the fucking game. You still want to have creatures being vulnerable all the time because it is still one of the most powerful stats in the game. So fundamentally, what does this change? Their objective with this change was to diversify builds. Objective failed. People are still stacking vulnerable damage because it's one of the most important stats in the game because you didn't do things right, because you didn't actually balance things appropriately. The only thing you did was you nerfed a ton of builds that were using vulnerable damage without changing anything else. And that change achieved absolutely nothing else in terms of build variety, so it was just a complete waste. It just made the game slower and less fun for most people. Now, they're saying that in the future, they want to let builds be broken until they have alternatives. There was a lot of future talk in this particular conversation, where developers say, further into the future, we have a plan, we're going to fix this, we promise, further into the future. Let me just tell you something. I don't believe you. There's going to be another stream next Friday. I'm not going to do this twice. Forget about that. Next Friday, I'm playing Remnant 2 or something else that's more interesting. Definitely not doing another stream of these because fuck wasting my time. More density in Nightmare Dungeons and Helltides. Which, assuming that these changes come together at the same time, that they are going to... Where's the... They said that they were nerfing... Did I delete that? I might have deleted it. But they're nerfing the difficulty of level 100 Nightmare Dungeons. So, not level 100, but like just Nightmare Dungeons in general. They're nerfing their difficulty a little bit. And then they're adding more mob density. So, you know... Again, and this is an interesting thing, because once again, they also mentioned that, like, oh, Nightmare Dungeons also got massive EXP boosts. And this is precisely the problem that I have with the seasonal journey, okay? I want to explain this to people, because a lot of people don't seem to fucking get it, okay? Before they buffed Nightmare Dungeons, basically... people were doing a bunch of different dungeons for experience. They were doing a bunch of different activities in the game for experience. And Blizzard came in and said, no, we want you to be doing Nightmare Dungeons. And then people did Nightmare Dungeons. And then Blizzard's like, oh, wait, level 100 Nightmare Dungeons are too hard. We actually don't know if we want you making Nightmare Dungeons because they're harder than we initially planned for. So it's like, Blizzard wants you to do things a certain way, but they haven't even tested if doing things that way fucking works to begin with. And this is the problem that I have. It's like, listen, you made a game. I just want you to let me play it. I want you to let me play it the way that I want. I don't want you to be leading me by the nose. Oh, you should be doing Helltides. You should be doing Tree of Whispers. You should be doing Nightmare Dungeons. You should be doing that. There were players that were having fun just doing normal dungeons. And then they felt the need to, like, lower the drop rates on elites on normal dungeons so that players wouldn't be getting that much loot. It's like, getting loot is already fucking asinine in this goddamn game. Most people don't even want to deal with the hassle of, like, trying to find a 0.1% upgrade roll on a game that has, like, fucking 7 million rolls for each item in the goddamn game. And people are just like... I just want my damage to go up. I don't want to be trying to figure out if I need more wisdom, more intelligence, more vulnerable damage, more crit damage. Number go up, okay? That's what people want. But they make this system be so incredibly asinine that a lot of people don't even want to have to deal with the search of the next upgrade that they're going to have for their build because it's a fucking spreadsheet. Nobody wants to deal with fucking spreadsheets. And so, despite all of this, you still want to come in here and tell people play this way because I tell you to play this way. And again, when you get back to the season journey, this is what upset me. People are like, Rurikhan, just craft the 5 elixirs. Like, what if I don't want to craft fucking 5 elixirs? I just want to play the game. I just want to do dungeons. Just let me do dungeons. That's what I like to do. Why do I need to go out of my way to go do Cellars? Why do I need to go out of my way to do Helltides and Tree of Whispers? I just want to do dungeons. Just let me do. I know that a lot of people don't like the dungeons. They're repetitive, all this shit. Let me grind those dungeons. Let me grind them into the fucking oblivion, because that's what I want to do. No, you can't do that. You have to play the way we say. We decide how you have fun. And that is asinine, dude. Asinine. Anyway, congratulations, everybody. You get one more stash tab to make up for the fact that Malignant Hearts take all the fucking space in your inventory. It's not an inventory tab, though. No, no, no. We definitely want you constantly coming back to town, going to your fucking stash, and depositing the ones that are important, or sharding the ones that aren't. We want you to spend some time with your inventory, because we couldn't come up with a more elegant system than just blowing a fat load of Malignant Hearts into your inventory. Look, Malignant Hearts for you and for you and for you. They definitely achieved something, which is I don't think anybody's going to be complaining about fucking gem space, because at least gems stack. Unlike Malignant Hearts, they're malignant because they take up all your goddamn space. You might as well be called Spacious Hearts. They just take up all your fucking stash. But don't worry, you get one more stash. However, let me just warn you, I highly doubt that stash is going to be free. You're probably going to have to pay good gold for that stash. So be aware of that. Also, Elixir's now stacked to 99, so whatever. And now here's the killer one, dude. This is fucking hilarious. A 40% respec cost reduction. I remember this so well. When I was playing the beta, one of the biggest issues that I instantly brought up is I said, listen, Blizzard, let's be real. You guys are terrible at balancing classes. You are bad at It's just a fact. You can live in a fucking dream fantasy land if you want to. Blizzard is terrible about balancing classes. They've always been, and I don't think that's ever going to change. It's that simple, okay? So when they were talking about, oh, the respec costs of this, that, I was always saying, no respec costs. We can't have respec costs because your balancing team is unreliable. You are going to nerf builds. You're going to make them not viable. And guess what they did with this patch? A whole sweeping swath of builds just went straight into the fucking dumpster of not viable. And guess what? You had to pay through the fucking nose if you wanted to make those characters viable again. But don't worry, they're fixing it. They're reducing the respec cost by 40%. You want to know what that means? That means that now their inadequacies at balancing the classes of the game are going to cost you less gold. So that when you invest all of your time and in-game resources into that perfect build that you were doing because it was working, and they fuck it up and destroy your build, it's going to cost you 40% less gold to fix it. Congratulations. Remove respec costs. It's like, listen, either you become excellent at your job and you learn how to balance things properly, or remove respec cost reductions. Players should not be punished over the fact that you can't balance your goddamn game. Now, this was another hilarious part. XP adjustments to make it easier for you to level up from 50 to 100, okay? Listen, they want to make sure that it is easier to level from 50 to 100 because they realize it's actually too hard. It takes too long for you to level up to level 100. By the way, this is not me saying it, because a lot of people be like, Rurikhan just doesn't want to work. There's actually a lot of players that think that I don't like challenge in video games. Like leveling up to level 100 is one big challenge. It's not challenging. Leveling up to 100 is not challenging. It just takes patience. It is boring, but it just takes patience. There's no challenge involved. You just go in, you make a good build, you kill a fuck ton of monsters for a fuck ton of hours, you'll get to level 100. It's not that hard. Shit, even if you die, you don't even lose the XP. I don't understand what are these people that are clamoring for, it's a challenge. It's not a fucking challenge, it just takes time. Anyway, the developers realized, oh, it takes too much time for players to level up to 100. At which point I have to once again come along and ask the exact same question. Where was the testing? Did you test this? Did you have a QA team level up from 50 to 100? Oh, it takes too long, so you didn't test it. You just mathed it out on some fucking Excel spreadsheet, and somebody made a mistake on a comma somewhere, and somehow you ended up with the wrong times. But the most hilarious part about this is how they were saying, oh, we need to make it easier to level to 50 to 100. That's why you nerf experience in the latest patch in the game? I mean, hey, you know, I mean, what are you going to say? So another thing that they've also talked about is they decided amongst themselves. Listen, they decided amongst themselves, they had a meeting, and they were saying, okay, so listen, guys, I saw this yesterday in a live stream somewhere in live servers, and there was this terrible practice happening. That was a player that was level 1. They boosted him through dungeons all the way into World Tier 4. And then there were 3 other players that were running around in the dungeon collecting experience for this level 1 player. This is wrong. This is very wrong. I can't believe that poor level 1 player is sitting there at the door of the dungeon not having fun. See, they basically had a meeting and they decided that that level 1 player was not enjoying themselves. Okay? They single-handedly decided that this player who was able to convince 3 of his friends to power level him, they decided that he was not having fun. They said, this is not fun for the player that has to sit at the dungeon while the other people are power leveling him. Let me explain something, okay? I've played Diablo 1, I've played Diablo 2, I've played Diablo 3. I have both boosted and have been boosted multiple times in both Diablo 2 and Diablo 3. I didn't do it in Diablo 1 because I didn't play that much Diablo 1. And let me tell you something. I always had fun when I was getting power leveled because I was preparing a specific build. I had already grinded the items that I was going to put into the character. What do you mean? What do you mean the player's not having fun? The player was able to convince somebody else to power level him. How are you going to make the decision that they're not having fun? Power leveling is fine. You had no business nerfing power leveling, but apparently they said, we don't want people to power level. Okay. And, you know, it is what it is. No power leveling, no fun allowed. Power leveling is something that has always happened in Diablo games, but they decided not in my Diablo 4. We decide what is fun and what is not. Now, continuing onwards, this one to me is hilarious. So they asked about Uber Uniques. They asked, and the funny part about Uber Uniques is that I've talked about Uber Uniques a couple of times. My take on Uber Uniques is that they are a worthless fucking item. And the reason they are worthless is because they don't exist. These items might as well not exist in the game because their drop rates are so rare that they might drop to 10 players in the entire player base. If that. They might drop to 10 players. So why do these items even exist? And the best part is that people always tell me, whenever I talk about Uber Uniques, the first thing that people tell me is, you don't need Uber Uniques. They don't give that much power. And then Joe Pipora says, well, these are items that give players a huge spike of power. Now, I'm not the one who said it. I don't know if these items give a huge spike of power or not. I don't claim to actually know if they do these things or not. Players have told me that Uber Uniques don't matter. It's not that big a deal. It's whatever. Yet I'm always hearing about players who want Shaco for some reason. They're not uber powerful, but everybody wants a fucking Shaco for whatever reason. Somehow these people manage to argue that these items are not that important, but all of them want a Shaco. And then you have one of the lead developers come up and say that these items provide you with a huge spike of power. Well, which one is it? Basically, in my opinion, you either increase the drop rate of these items so that people can actually play with them and experience them, or you remove them from the game. It is what it is. But, you know, they also said, oh, but they're not mandatory. They're just a huge spike in power, but they're not mandatory. Which one is it? Are they a huge spike of power, or are they not mandatory? Anyway, then they talk about crowd control. We all know that crowd control is a bunch of bullshit, doesn't really matter. They didn't say anything specific about how they were going to deal with crowd control. Crowd control is still going to be a problem. I think that they nerfed crowd control a little bit in the latest patch, but it's apparently still problematic. Anyway, Barbarian and Sorceress fixes are coming in a couple of weeks. So if you like playing Barbarian or Sorceress, yeah, they don't give a fuck. You're going to be, you know, having your classes be shit for a couple of weeks. So I hope you enjoy that. They said they're looking to make changes on armor. No specifics, again, because why would you give specifics? This was obviously in regards to the fact that Barb and Sork feel like they're made out of paper. Then they said they were talking about target farming. And when talking about target farming, the first thing that they said, well, the UI team is very passionate. They want to make comparison easier. I already said, I know the UI team's passionate. They already scammed me. That's how passionate they are, so sure. And then they said they want to work on how progression works as you're moving up the world tiers. They want to improve that, but they didn't really give any specifics. And then in regards to actual targeted farming, they said that they're going to be doing something for Season 2. And I'm like, oh, Season 1 started yesterday. Season 1 started yesterday. The game is in shambles. The game is in actual fucking shambles. And you want to tell me that you're going to fix some things in the next season? Because that's the plan all along. The plan all along is to get you to string along and just like slow walk you. They slow walk you. They're like, we're going to fix it. In the future, we'll fix it. In the future. We're going to fix it. Fix it. And then here's another interesting thing. Apparently, creatures are killing players a lot more than we expect. And I'm like, so... And by the way, this was before the patch. So they realized that some types of creatures were killing players a lot more than they expected before the patch. Chilling creatures, charging creatures, exploding creatures. I've been saying it since forever. I thought it was interesting because people in my stream were telling me, nah, Rurikhan, you're crazy. When I was telling them, they're like, listen, there's nothing I fear more in this game than a chilling creature. There's literally nothing I fear more in Diablo 4 than a chilling elite mob. It doesn't matter if it's in World Tier 1 or World Tier 4. There is nothing I fear more than a chilling creature. Because they will fuck you up in seconds. They will blast you open, no ifs, ands, or buts. Okay? But the interesting part is they were saying, oh, by the way, we realize that these creatures are killing players a lot more than we intended or expected, so we're going to nerf your survivability. Which goes in line with the part where they said, we realize that level 100 nightmare dungeons are way harder than we expected, so we're nerfing your survivability. I'm just asking, what kind of decision making is this? Like, who makes these types of decisions? Pizza Man Invaded, thank you very much for the souls. Tip of the hat, appreciate support. Thank you. Thank you very much. So, you know, it's the usual thing. And then this part here was hilarious. Like, these next two items are so hilarious, bro. I was just laughing my ass off. So, somebody made a suggestion. Like, hey, how about, you know, if when we find a new legendary and we extract the affix from it, we can store that in the Codex of Power. And basically, whenever we get a better version, we can upgrade the version we have stored in the Codex of Power so that it becomes better. And I shit you not, Joe Shelley came out and said, you know what? That's a really good suggestion. And my mind was blown. And some of you might be wondering, why was your mind blown, Rurikhan? Maybe you're not aware of the fact that this was a feature that was already present in Diablo 3. That's exactly how extracting powers from legendary items worked in Diablo 3. You'd get the legendary, you extract its power into the Horadric Cube, and the roll that you got on the legendary affix is recorded there. You find a better one, you extract it into the cube, and it gets upgraded. This is a system that was already in Diablo 3. And when somebody suggests this to a Diablo 4 developer, his answer is, that's a nice suggestion. But that's not as bad as the other developer, which was Joe Pipora, when he starts asking the question, If like, well, yeah, we could do that, but it's so much fun to extract legendary affixes and have them in your inventory. That was something that was actually said in this in this Campfire chat. They actually said this. The Days End. Were they on the Diablo 3 team though? Who cares? Did they not play Diablo 3? What do you mean? Do we just like ignore the like imagine if like, okay, I know how to edit in Adobe Premiere, but let me just forget all of the tricks that I've learned from editing and start editing videos like I'm a fucking idiot and doesn't know how to actually edit things. What do you mean? They've developed this technology in their previous game. Who cares if they worked on it or not? The technology's already in-house. What do you mean? Don't you know that you can do this in Diablo 3? I think that is even worse. If you're going to tell me that because they didn't work on Diablo 3, they aren't aware that this is a system in Diablo 3, I would argue say that's even worse. Doesn't make any sense. But, you know, they were there debating how fun it is to have, like, 100 different roles of legendary affixes because that's interesting. No, you put it all on the Codex of Power. It would actually make respecking your character for when you fuck it up by nerfing the shit out of it. It would make it a lot easier because right now, if I need to respec my necromancer, let's say for instance, I want to respec my necro. Right now it's a minion necro and I want him to be a blood necro. I have to go through my whole inventory in my stash looking for good blood legendary affixes so that I can extract them because extracting an affix actually costs gold. So I only extract them when I have to. So I have to go through all the things. You can't even search it. You can't even search it, which is a system, by the way, that is implemented into your skills, but somehow not implemented into your inventory. So I can't even search my inventory for things relevant to Blood Spec Necro so that it will at least highlight them for me. No, I have to go item by item, looking through all of them, trying to find what is the thing that I want for this respec that I'm going to do for my character because Blizzard nerfed it into the ground and now it's a piece of dog shit. Let me tell you how much fun that would be. It's so much fun, I've never respec from Minion Necro despite the fact it was a piece of dog shit. That's how much fun that system is. Okay? You should probably implement the nice suggestion that the guy had in chat that was present in Diablo 3 and fix that problem. Anyway, this one was also, bro, this one was hilarious, but let me just address this one now. Complicated, thank you very much for the souls. Tip of the hat, appreciate support. Blizzard is now trash, unfortunately time to leave. I would argue they've been trash for a while. I'm so incredibly disappointed, but we'll talk about that in just a bit. Anyway, so the other thing was they've increased cast time to leave dungeons. So for those of you that don't know, leaving dungeons used to be 3 seconds. So you press your button, your thing to leave the dungeon, and it lasts 3 seconds, teleports you out of the dungeon. And then a player asked, why did you increase this time to 5 seconds? I think it's a reasonable question. It's 2 more seconds. In a whole session, it can add up to quite a lot, especially the way that people play Diablo 4 like degenerates, myself included. I'm not like trying to grandstand and be like, oh, I'm not a degenerate. No, I'm an absolute fucking degenerate. I played the fuck out of Diablo 4 during launch weeks. I played the fuck out of it. You better believe it. So I was an absolute degenerate. So for a degenerate, those 2 seconds every time you are leaving a dungeon, they add up over time significantly. And so naturally the player asked, hey, what's the deal with this change? And their answer was, well, it's a very minor change. We're evaluating it. And it's like, what we wanted to understand is why? Why did you just arbitrarily change the cast that lasted for 3 seconds and it now lasts 5? And he didn't even give anybody a reason. He just said, well, it's so minor. It's not really a big deal. We're evaluating it. What the fuck does that mean? That's not an answer. Oh, it's minor. We don't care? Like, what the fuck? Is there a technical reason? Is there like, or do you just want people? Because here's the thing. If you take a good look at a lot of the changes that were made, what do? They cause you to take longer to play the game. That's what the changes cause you. They cause you to take longer to play the game. That's all it's about. It's all about shit just takes longer. And they specifically address in this live stream, that's not what we want to do. Okay, how are you going to fix it? Oh, we have a plan. Hey guys, I have a plan too, okay? Listen, I have a plan. I'm going to make us all millionaires. How, Rurikhan? Don't worry about it. I have a plan. Just keep watching all of my videos. 10 years from now, we're all going to be millionaires. How? I have a plan. I have a plan. Don't worry about it. Just keep watching my videos. Bunch of bullshit, dude. Anyway, people said that they wanted more items per season, and he said, yep, we're listening to feedback. Yeah, sure. Then people asked about resistances, and he said, that's later in the future. And then people asked about, oh, can we see the campaign bosses more often? And he said, oh, that'd be amazing. I have nothing else to add. Okay. And that was everything. At least I think that was most of what they talked about. Now, before we wrap things up, I want to say something because people do have a tendency. I'm not saying you guys specifically, but there are a lot of people here. There's 3,000 people here. And sometimes there's a tendency to go hound developers, send mean messages, do all of these things. Please don't do that. Just like, at the end of the day, they're people. They have a job to do. They have their stuff to do. And even though I will criticize it heavily, one thing that I will not do is, go beyond criticizing and saying the things that I don't agree that they are doing with. I'm not going to be looking for their families or doing any... You take no action against them. Like, they're just people like you and me. It is what it is. Okay? That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. But, yeah. So, at the end of the day, listen, guys, Diablo 4 was real fun. I did exactly what I wanted to do with the game. I know that a lot of people went into Diablo 4 expecting thousands of hours of entertainment. That was never the case for me. I went into Diablo 4 and I said, look, if I get a good story out of this, a little bit of good gameplay, I'll be happy. I got that. I enjoyed myself. It was good stuff. It was enough for me to come back and play the campaign, but then they pulled that UI shenanigans with me, and I'm not going to let that fly. I am done. Done with Diablo 4. If you guys want to come back for their stream on Friday, go watch it on their channels. I'm covering that. I don't care. Capitan Crimp, thank you very much for the souls. Tip of the hat, appreciate the support. Interesting that no one addressed the patch notes missing a bunch of changes. When Shaco was dropping, the fix took 2 hours. When Helltide Cinder drop rates were reduced, it took 2 days. Yep, it is what it is. But guys, I hope that those of you that want to keep playing the game, I hope that the game is fun for you. I hope it brings you a lot of happiness. Done with it. JV Doc, thank you very much for the souls. Actually, thank you very much for being grossly in condition is a thing! You absolute Chad of worth. I'm so very happy I didn't jump the D3-4 train. I'm sticking to my table RPGs for broken bills, not I'm farming. Any chance we see you play one? I don't know. We'll see. Thank you very much, though. I really appreciate it. Tip of the hat. But yeah, guys, I'm kind of done. It's like, it was fun while it lasted, but I don't have faith. Especially after what I saw today, I have no faith that they have what it takes to bring the game back together. I hope that I'm wrong for everybody else that is still playing the game. I hope that you guys have a fantastic time playing Diablo. If you guys enjoyed the stream, hit the like button. I really appreciate you. I'm going to take a break. I'm going to get some food, and then I'm going to decide if I'm going to stream Remnant 2 tonight or tomorrow, which I still haven't decided. I'm still figuring that out. But yes, I will decide that at some point, and I'll put up another event in the channel, and you guys can check out that content if you're interested. If not, then I'll see you guys later whenever I have other games that you're interested in. Love you all. Peace and happiness for everybody. You guys have a good one. All right? Stay strong. Stay safe. Peace out.